back to Late Night at the Movies. Welcome back to Late Night Chat Network, your first stop for pop culture talk.
There you go. Yeah.
No, trust me, I was a little nervous. I didn't sing one line. I was
Sorry.
like, why am I so nervous?
Everyone's gonna get used to it. Everyone's gonna know it's their first stop for pop culture talk. Look at the stats. Check the stats, bro.
Oh yeah. We're our profile's rising, man.
Watch out.
Is. We have come back for another edition at Late Night at the Movies. This one is my pick, and I picked Steve Jobs. And I'm joined by the two OGs in the house, JT and Nico. What's up?
Yeah, what's going on? Happy to be here. Happy to be here at my place.
We're back here again.
Back in the studio.
Absolutely. So here's an idea.
Oh, hold on. Where's our fourth though? Our fourth chair.
Julie,
I think we need to tell people what she's been up to.
What has she been up to? Why don't you tell the people?
Guys, Julie unfortunately was not able to join us today because she's was involved in a bear attack. Actually, a bear attack.
Oh, that's horrible. Why am I laughing?
She's healing. It's okay. She's gonna be all right. We hope that she will be back. I think she will be joining us again in December when we do our Christmas movie pick, which is actually going to be my pick. So stay tuned at the end of this episode. JT's favorite holiday. That's right. But stay tuned, and we hope to actually get her here in person in the studio with us for that one. So that'll be a lot of fun. So stay tuned for that.
You know what I really like about this format of our show? I feel like every time someone picks a movie, they're kind of like slowly like revealing like what their tastes are, what their interests are, like a little bit of their personality a bit. And so
it's the beauty of it, right?
Kind of interesting, yeah. You know, like what kind of vibes people are into, what holds their interest, and exactly. And so Nico picked Halloween, and Julie picked The Crow, and you picked The Beach Bum. So now it's my turn with Steve Jobs. What does this movie say about me? I guess we'll find out. I saw this movie came out in 2015. So almost 10 years ago, 9 years ago. And I actually saw this one in theaters with my dad. And it's so funny because growing up, I'm going to talk about a lot about the history behind this movie and also just my own personal history with Steve Jobs and stuff like that. Growing up, my dad, we always had computers in the house, but my dad was always so adamant that Apple was always making the best products. Like, he was always like, Max, like, they make the best. Apple, right? Even though we always had like PCs and Apples, and I also remember in elementary school they had the iMac, which is the product that gets launched at the end of this movie in our computer labs and stuff. So I remember that product like
in most computer labs. Yeah, honestly, it was the computer of that time.
It was, it really was, and it had all different types of colors and stuff like that, which was really cool. And so he was like always, and this was actually his idea to go see this movie, and I saw it at Kingsway Theater. You know the Kingsway, like in my neighborhood, and that theater is like, anytime you go see a movie, there's only like 2 or 3 people there. Like I'm still this day, I'm still like surprised they're in business. Like no shot at them. Like don't come after me, but like, yeah,
that's wonderful though.
Yeah. And every time I go to that movie theater, there's nobody in there, so it was just me, him, and like 3 other people probably watching it that night. And they also only show movies like a month after they've come out. So I like when we saw it, it was. I think this movie came out October of 2015. We saw it like end of November, mid-November 2015. So like literally 9 years ago to this month, and there was like this movie, and I guess we can talk about it later. Was not a hit at the box office. Didn't make a lot of money. Didn't really make a splash in that sense. But so what I was saying was earlier with like he was such a huge Apple guy, but I didn't personally know who Steve Jobs actually was, the person, until 2007. And the reason why I remember that year so vividly was because that was the year that the iPhone launched and debuted. But more importantly, my cousin showed me a sketch on Mad TV where Michael McDonald, like the one on Mad TV, not the singer,
I know.
Dressed up as Steve Jobs.
Did he come out with a turtleneck?
The black turtleneck with the glasses and the blue jeans. And it was a sketch. It was called the Apple eye rack, where he pulled a shoe rack on stage.
and like put like Apple products and it's like the
Yeah.
new product. And
Yeah.
this is like my first reference point to who Steve Jobs is. I don't like
Right.
I'm like a kid. I don't know who Steve Jobs is. And I was like, oh wow. And that sketch was so informative to me because it like educated me on like who this person was and like what his look is and what he kind of does. He goes on stage and he presents these products to the world and stuff like that. And so I was like, okay, this was very interesting. And we see the movie, and the movie is good. I wasn't like, oh wow, this is great. Like the first time I saw it, I was like, okay, that was a good movie. Like I like that a lot. And it was written by Aaron Sorkin, who is a very, very good writer, and directed by Danny Boyle. I but for whatever reason, like a couple years passed by, and I revisit this movie, and I liked it so much better on a revisit. I was like, wow, okay, this is like a really good movie. I'm surprised, it didn't make the impact it did, and actually maybe there are some reasons to it, and we can get into it later. But I was surprised. I was like, wow, this like nobody ever really brings this movie up ever. Like when they like it's kind of been a little forgotten in time a bit, and so that's actually like a big motivation for why I picked this movie.
Yeah, I remember you saying when you were trying to figure out which one to pick, and you had given us several thousand different movies to pick from last episode. But you know, there was like several of them. But you said the one thing I remember you said about this movie is like you're like, this is worth the conversation.
Yeah,
like,
and I
having a conversation over. And you said that like I feel like this is overlooked.
Yeah. I definitely feel that way. And this movie is like 9 years. So this is not a movie that I like watch every year or whatever, but like every 3 or 4 years since it's come out, I have revisited it, and I get like more and more impressed by it. Just the strength of the writing and just and the acting, of course, like the actors. So Michael Fassbender plays Steve Jobs, and also I want to talk a little bit about the history of this movie, like the production of it, if I could. So October of 2011, Steve Jobs, he passes away. He loses his battle to cancer. But that same month, Walter Isaacson comes out with the biography of Steve Jobs. It's kind of like the definitive text.
Own it.
You own it.
Yeah,
Okay, you read it too?
No.
I want to read it actually after this whole
talked about it. Nobody's read it.
Well, I bought it because of the hype the book was getting at the time.
Yeah.
I was all in on learning about this guy around the time these films came out as well about him, and like there was documentaries about him as well after he had passed. So like, yeah, I was very fascinated by him at the time, and like you said, that book was very popular.
It was very popular.
I got it for Christmas the year maybe after it came out.
Yeah. If you ever hopped into a bookstore, you'd seen it. Like it's with the white background. He's got the pose and shit,
which is kind of like the poster of this film.
Yeah, it is. It is
because it's like, and I feel like a lot of books started to copy it, the biographies of people, that like just the straight still shot of the person's face. On
a lot of his biographies. Do that too, because he also just recently came out with an Elon Musk one too. I don't know if you've seen
that. Is that right?
That's by him as well.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
There's so many books that look like that now, and that's probably why.
So Sony Pictures, they buy the book rights, the film rights to that book, to his biography, in that same month, and they hire Aaron Sorkin to write the script. So this is end of 2011, and at this point, Aaron Sorkin is coming off winning an Oscar for The Social Network, and he had just released Moneyball, the baseball movie with
excellent movie.
Two great movies.
Excellent
like he is like
that's one that I rewatched twice this past year. I love that.
I love that too.
I love
it too.
It's a great movie.
And so he is like, I mean, you know, it's so funny. This is 2011. He's probably the hottest writer in town at that point, and I think probably it still holds true to this day. I don't know a lot of screenwriters that have the same sort of cachet that he does, where it's almost like he's almost like the most important like creative voice of every movie. It's really because of how identifiable his writing is. Like when you hear his dialogue, you know it's coming from him. And so they hire him to write this book. The script. Fast forward to 2014, he finishes the script. He hands it over to Sony Pictures, and they originally were gonna get David Fincher to direct this movie. I don't know if you knew that.
I didn't.
They originally were gonna get David Fincher. They were gonna kind of reteam the original Social Network.
I'm kind of glad he didn't. Though.
Yeah. Me too, because I really did like the job Danny Boyle did, but they originally were gonna get David Fincher to direct, and David's choice to play Steve Jobs was Christian Bale. So I don't know. That would have been, and I can't help.
Actually, now that you say that,
Yeah.
I would actually much rather see that version. To be honest with you,
No. We're gonna get.
Fincher, Christian Bale.
Hold on.
Different type of actors.
We're gonna
they
get
can play
into it.
the
And
similar part.
the funny thing is, had David Fincher directed this movie, I have no doubt in my mind he would have gotten Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross to probably do the soundtrack as well. Because I was going to talk about the soundtrack too later on by Daniel Pemberton, which is really good. So they I guess David Fincher and Sony, they have like some contract dispute or something, so he exits the project. Christian Bale leaves shortly after. And then, so this is really funny. This the production of this movie was very, very publicized because around this time, you guys will remember this, when Seth Rogen came out with the interview, the Sony got hacked by North Korea or whatever, the company that made that movie. So everyone's emails got leaked out into like all these executives, like Amy Pascal's, all these people's executives, they get leaked into the internet. So now people are reading like all the history of like all the casting choices that would have been involved in the Steve Jobs movie. And it makes it seem like from the outside looking in that this movie had a very troubled like production when it really didn't. That's just sort of the norm. So after David leaves, Christian Bale leaves too. They get Danny Boyle. They hire on Danny Boyle, and then they kind of rifle through a couple other actors. I'm going to name Leonardo DiCaprio. They were eyeing to play Steve Jobs. You know,
I love Leo. Too.
Yeah, I love Leo too. But
I'm one of the people that will stick up for him when it comes to these conversations, but I don't see that. No.
And then they get I think George Clooney was also a name that was like thrown out there too. And then they finally land on Michael Fassbender to play Steve Jobs. And I think what's so great about this casting choice is
as
that
most people know him, Magneto.
Oh my god. Yeah, unfortunately. He's a great Magneto, don't get me wrong, but like he's also like, this is actually really one of my favorite performances by him as Steve. And what's so funny is like, what's so interesting about this sort of whole like biopic thing is like that term biopic is that, you know, Fassbender looks nothing like Steve Jobs, like the real Steve Jobs, you know. And they always try to get like people who I like. Aaron Sorkin like did an interview where he was talking about this whole thing about like these movies, these sort of biography movies, they read more like a Wikipedia page where it's like a cradle to grave story. It's like the birth to the death and stuff like that. And he says these are not he doesn't want his movies to be like photographs. They're more like paintings. He's using these people's lives as a way to create interesting drama, right? Like interesting narratives. And so this movie is split into 3 acts, 3 chapters basically, and they each take place basically 45 minutes before a product launch. The first one is the Macintosh in 1984. The second one is the next computer in 88, is like when he leaves Apple or whatever. And then the third one is when he returns to Apple, the iMac in 1998, 10 years later. So it's like a 3-act structure. And all these conversations that he has with these characters, and we'll get it. I feel like I'm talking way too much. You guys want to jump into that?
You're opening.
Okay, I'm up.
You're
Okay,
great. You're doing great.
Okay, thanks. So there's each and there's like a revolving. It's this movie kind of reads almost like a play, like a stage play, in the sense that there's Steve Jobs, the central character played by Michael Fassbender, but then there are like other surrounding characters that appear almost in every chapter. It's like the movie is really based on like these 6 relationships that he has with these characters.
See, I'll just quickly add, that's the thing I feel like about Aaron Sorkin films, though, or his dialogue-driven scenes, is that, I don't know, they lack like a certain like soul to them sometimes.
You think so?
Yeah, a little bit, because the scenes are so like exhilarating. Don't get me wrong. Like there's great dialogue going back and forth, great performances happening. And like you said, all the acts, like the way, I guess soulless makes it sound really bad. What I mean is like if
created. Created, fabricated.
Yeah. Like it's everything's in place for it to kind of work.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel natural, really. That's right. And I don't mean that in a bad way.
It's not. It's created. It's definitely designed.
Right. So like
designed is a good word.
For it. So like even comparing it to a movie like last week, like Jay's pick, when we talked about Beach Bum, that felt like they're just winging everything and it feels very natural, everything that's coming. This is very structured and kind of like,
Absolutely.
you know what I mean? Like,
and then you miss the important parts with this because there is such a structured dialogue. There is important parts that little quiet scenes that are in there.
Right.
So
That if you don't pay attention and just to the dialogue, you're gonna miss it.
I like
so-
Sorkin
so-
too, so I'm not trying to like
no.
talk shit about him.
That
It's just-
no.
yeah.
You say your opinion, please.
Yeah.
But the thing is, it's so funny that you bring that up because I was actually going to recall to Beach Bum in my notes. I was saying that I think I told you guys this last episode. Remember in the previous one with the Beach Bum how I said that the filmmaker Harmony Korine, he doesn't like how in scripts or whatever in movies how every character sounds like it came from the same person. So that's why he kind of went for a more improvisational sort of style,
Right.
to make it feel more natural and more stuff like stuff like that.
Right.
Aaron Sorkin, every character in his movie, and this is kind of how you can identify it's an Aaron Sorkin, is they all talk like Aaron Sorkin.
Right.
It's very fast paced, and this is the thing I also noticed about Aaron Sorkin. He's very attracted to stories about very intelligent people,
Right.
and people who almost use their intelligence almost as like a power like thing to like they exert power over other people, almost like I'm the smartest guy in the room, therefore shut the hell up kind of thing.
But that kind of plays into some of my thoughts about the way he was depicted in this movie is that these genius characters, they need people to believe in them for them to be able to do what they need to do. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's almost like it's not, they can't, like, it's one of those things where without the other people that just fold to their weirdness, like, and like just give in to their creative process, as cold and disconnected as a human being as sometimes these geniuses can be, like, because they need to get done what they need to get done because that's how their mind works. You know what I mean? Like, but they need people to believe in them in order to make the magic happen. You know what I mean? Like, that's because that's the thing. He's a visionary. Like that. He was a visionary. Like that's what this movie kind of tells you. But unfortunately, it's all the other things in his life that fall by the wayside.
There's this term that's describing exactly what you're talking about, and it's mentioned in the script, and it's a term that actually originated because of Steve Jobs, like what people were describing as Steve Jobs. It's the term called reality distortion field. It's said in the movie, like if you guys remember that, right? And it basically there's like a Wikipedia page you can read about it. It came from Steve Jobs, where Steve Jobs had this natural ability to convince people around him how to like achieve tasks that seemed almost impossible, but he had like because he was a very charismatic speaker, he had a way of like convincing people to achieve like
special type
crazy
of person, man, for that
to
pull that off.
Absolutely.
Because everybody else would just be like, "Fuck you, man! I'm not doing this," and walk out of the room.
So Aaron Sorkin, all his stuff sounds like it comes from Aaron Sorkin, and like in all his movies that has that consistency. You know what he kind of reminds me of a little bit? I don't know if you guys are Woody Allen fans, but if you ever watch a Woody Allen movie, it doesn't matter who his lead actor is. Like, it literally doesn't make no difference if it's Woody Allen, if it's Jesse Eisenberg, if it's Kate Blanchett, if it's Scarlett Johansson. They all talk like Woody Allen. They all talk like all nervously
Kevin
and
Smith
like
movies. Like Kevin Smith.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like I'm not opposed to that. It's just it's a created thing. It's a created image, and this movie is a total fabrication because like I'm sure all these conversations they did happen. But the chances of them all happening right before a product launch with all these, of course not. Like this is a
well, he even has a line like that in the movie where he basically says like, that everybody's gonna come before the launch date. Like every scene that's like that, it's like the lead up to the launch, and 5 people come through with like issues in his life, and like there's just shit all over.
To me, this is okay, but you know what though? This to me is the stroke of genius of this movie. Why it takes place before launch is because the launch where Steve Jobs is on stage is how the whole world actually knows him for when he goes on stage. And like, that's how I always see, because that's how I was introduced to him on that, through that Mad TV sketch where he's on stage.
That's
and
how
he's got
I know
the music.
Yeah,
that's how we all know
it was the
him.
big day, because whenever he announced something after the launch of the iPhone, it'd be like, oh, he's announcing the updates today. Like, you know, a year in, the iPhone 2 or whatever, you know, and not 2.1 or whatever, you know.
And not for nothing, I would actually over the years like end up watching
signature turtleneck
and everything, the glasses, the jeans, the white shoes. Like I remember like over the years I would watch like the real Steve Jobs, like his product launches, even like for older products that are like whatever, they're so old now, but like it's so interesting to see how he commanded a screen. He was the way he's describing a product.
Well, that's why I love the scene with the shirt. Everything was thought out down to something like that. Where he's like, I'm gonna come through with the white shirt. I'm gonna take it out of the pocket. That's
Yeah,
how I'm gonna
yeah.
present the drive or
Yeah, yeah.
whatever, the floppy
Which-
disk or whatever he had.
we could get into a conversation later on whether or not Steve Jobs is a genius or not, because I know there are some people who have their sort of qualms about that, like oh, was he actually that guy or whatever. And I think of all the talents, I mean, I think he was. I think, you know, of a visionary, a brilliant business mind, but I honestly think his greatest talent is his stage presence. His
Yes.
like his ability to be on stage, and just his speaking ability. And like, for someone who like kind of like struggles with like stage fright, me personally, like
Right.
I find I'm like very envious of that kind of thing. Like, he's just a great speaker. And if you watch like the videos of him like debuting the iPhone or whatever, his control of the stage, how he's injecting humor into the situation,
Right.
how he's able to very clearly and like explain the product. And
I
its
also
use
think
and
though
stuff.
that's ego. I think that is ego though, or just
What do you mean ego?
how sure he is of himself. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's what drives him. Like, you know what I mean? So like, I think that's like his own ego. Like, there's a lot of moments, especially with the Waz scenes, where he's very condescending.
Absolutely.
Very
He's an asshole.
But again, he doesn't see it as that because he's that again. That's the eccentricities of geniuses. There's sometimes they're not socially. They're not wired that way.
Mhm.
No, yeah.
You see what I mean? Like, so in his mind, he's only saying what he has to say, and he doesn't see it as insulting the way he's saying it, because he's like, this is just a matter of fact.
Yeah.
I do this, you do that.
It's not good at sarcasm.
Like, I don't care if you were emotionally attached to this.
Yeah.
That project is of the past. It's all about me now.
future.
That's why I said the ego. It's kind of a little bit ego driven.
It's ego, but at the end of the day, he
can back his shit up though. That's
was
what
right. Yeah,
but
he was.
but that's why he's so sure of himself.
Yeah.
But call it what you want, ego or not.
And-
I know we associate ego with usually people that are egotistical and wrong about what they're saying, but you can still have ego
Absolutely.
and know that you're the shit and be like, yeah,
But-
I'm still, you know what I mean? But you don't have to. Most people will not play it that way. Most
Yeah.
people are not that sure of themselves. He was,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
That's what's amazing, honestly, to me. Anyways, about him.
Jay, yeah, go ahead, Jay.
It's true. Yeah. No, he's I don't know, like maybe even a little full of himself in a sense too, a little bit
Yeah.
narcissistic in a sense where he.
Oh, absolutely. At least
that's
the way
a
they portray
huge
him in this
character.
film.
Yeah, that
what
what
we
can
know of
see,
him.
yeah, that what I've seen from the film itself. But I mean, to be honest with you, they played it out pretty great. There's some good scenes in between that they rolled out. I've seen this movie before. I didn't realize I'd seen it until you guys had picked it, and I put it on. I was like, wow. And then I seen it again, and I only seen the audio, which meant I wasn't paying attention to the screen at the time, if you know what I mean. But I was listening to the audio, and you can tell just from what they were saying that he knows what he's talking about, and he's a salesman, and he's a fucking, regardless if he's a genius or not, you know. But he just couldn't acknowledge, you know, the part that you can't acknowledge other people, you know, that you don't see that in your head, makes you wonder about the type of person that is inside.
Right.
You know.
But again, people like this get away with this type of behavior because
It's
there's
hard.
people
Yeah,
that
no.
believe in them that are able to give them a pass.
Yeah.
Because they're like, oh, that's just Steve. That's just how he is.
Well, I get
But
that.
in-
That's
but-
just JT.
But no, but in regular society, that is
Yeah.
not acceptable the way that he's treating or talking to people. That's what I mean in regular everyday society. But people make way or give into this kind of stuff in the sake of genius, right? Because they're like, if we get in this guy's way,
Mhm.
he's not going to be able to do what he has to do.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right. That's the way I looked at it anyways. Right. And I think I get why like he would have probably connected with this film, because this guy is always big on talking about that kind of stuff, marketing, the way like, and this is like, this guy is a marketing genius. Like that's, I think his biggest skill is, quite frankly,
That's his biggest genius.
because
Exactly.
he wasn't an engineer, as is pointed out by Waz.
Well,
He
I-
made the first Apple with it,
I-
but not to the degree that he was.
I also think it's his eye for practicality, and so like there was this whole thing
And design, yeah.
design,
Yeah.
because there was this whole
But his
thing.
daughter showed him up on that.
There was this whole thing about how they have this argument. The whole relationship between Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak is this whole sort of like, and this is in the movie. I don't know what the relationship is in real life, if it was that contentious or whatever, but there was this whole kind of like bitterness towards each other because Steve Wozniak was the engineer, but Steve Jobs was the one getting all the credit for Apple as a company or whatever, right? And one of the things that was like really, really big that made me like see like, okay, this is what makes Steve Jobs different, was he was looking at how to make a computer, which before all of this, it was like these big blocky machines that you would only see in labs or whatever. He was saying, okay, how do we make the computer
Personal
a
computer.
personal device that is so intuitive that it's almost like a regular, ordinary house appliance, like a tool, whatever, that a child could sort of learn and could pick up and like just instantly teach themselves how to use. They don't need to like read a fucking manual or whatever. And I think that was the separator between Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. There's this whole like open system, closed system debate that's going on between them, where it's like Steve Wozniak was making a computer that other people like him would enjoy, like specialists or whatever, and Steve Jobs was trying to make a computer that everyone could enjoy.
Right.
So, and I think that was like the big picture. That was the big picture that he saw.
Yeah, but everyone that could enjoy, but on their own personal basis, in a sense.
Exactly.
Where you can't fuck with his technology.
Although I will say that
Exactly.
idea doesn't necessarily translate over to his second project, the black box one, because the next one.
Oh yeah.
Because that
talk about that.
I mean, there's reasons for why he did that, which I think they kind of touched on.
They touched on it, yeah.
But that, again, that was not to illustrate that this is something that he was trying to make. Like, it was more, again, that was just all design based. He just thought it was impressive on the design level of its, like, you know what I mean? Like, he spent all that time actually creating the look of it, but not actually on the
OS, on the operating system. Yeah. So if you, so
which is insane.
So this movie,
you're gonna really love the mouse.
Yeah. So this movie is divided in 3 acts, like I said earlier, like 3 different periods of time. And in the first chapter takes place in '84 when he is launching the Macintosh, and he is like, you know, he believes that this is going to be the next product that launches Apple into the next level, like on another level of their company, and it flops as a product, and as a result he gets fired, right? And in '88 is when he does what you're referring to, Nico, the next computer that you were talking about. I feel like each chapter of this movie is like a different Steve Jobs, and that's why I really, really like Michael Fassbender's performance in this movie, because he's almost playing like 3 different characters, I feel like, in each chapter. And in the first 1984 chapter, he's more like this really brash and really rough around the edges kind of guy who's just very aggressive and stuff like that, and just very uncompromising. I mean, he kind of is that in all the chapters, but I feel like you feel it the most in the first one. And then in the second one, he's more like a schemer. In the second one, he's more like tactical and a strategist and stuff like that. And it's so funny in the second chapter when they show the year 1988, like when it takes place. It's set against a backdrop of Napoleon, a painting of Napoleon. Right. And I was like, okay, that's not on accident. Like, I think the filmmaker Danny Boyle, who I think did a great job directing this film, I think he was trying to make the correlation between, like, you know, Napoleon, the strategist, this military strategist, and Steve Jobs
in the background.
Yeah, and like Steve Jobs, this kind of guy, how he's gonna figure out how to get back into Apple. So I would just want to go down the cast, if I may, like all the actors and the characters that they played, and so because even though Steve is the central subject of this movie, it's really being told through 6 interactions of different characters, and like how his relationship kind of evolves over the years with each of them. So there's Joanna Hoffman, played by Kate Winslet, who is like, I guess, the head of marketing, I guess was her position at that. She's basically like his
PR, probably.
Your PR, like she's basically like his most trusted kind of like
his right hand,
and they kind of make the work wife, basically. Like they have a very interesting relationship. They're very close to one another, and she's also kind of the one that's kind of like keeping him in check as far as like the
family stuff goes.
As far as his personality goes, she's the one that's kind of like telling it to him like he is.
Well, she's the closest to him every day on a daily basis.
She's like his closest confidant, basically, like basically her closest friend too. Honestly, even. And then there's Steve Wozniak, played by Seth Rogen, And so Steve Wozniak is like the engineering sort of mind of the whole computing process, and they always had an
As Nicola
interesting.
Waz is right here.
Yeah. So who's the Jobs and who's the Woz of this between the two of you?
Well, I'm the Jobs. I'm the face.
Of course, you'd pick yourself as Jobs, this arrogant son of a b. But and I always like, you know, even before this movie came out, I've always been sort of intrigued by the whole Jobs Wozniak kind of relationship and parallel, because it's almost like a story of like, and I don't know if this is how, like I said earlier, I don't know if this is how they felt about each other in real life, but I feel like the public kind of perpetrated that sort of narrative a bit, where they were saying like Jobs is like recognized genius and Wozniak is like the one that gets the credit list genius, like recognized versus unrecognized genius.
I think in any endeavor like this, when somebody takes off like the way that they did, like in terms of like how they're being recognized in the public eye, it's going to cause issues between the two people, because obviously, you know, it's very clear.
What kind of money gets involved too?
Well, that too, and
That's a
there's
huge
actually
thing.
stories about that too that involved Wozniak
Steve
and
Jobs?
yeah,
I
in
can
terms of
imagine.
the money that he was getting. But the thing with the Wozniak was, it's kind of like, honestly, like, you know what it reminded me of watching this movie? It reminded me of the Stan Lee Jack Kirby relationship.
Absolutely.
Because in comics, Stan
comics.
Lee, who's
Yeah,
the
Stan Lee,
face
yeah.
of Marvel,
Yeah, of course.
didn't necessarily create as much as he lets on.
Yeah.
But Steve Jobs, he didn't create as much as people think either, because he just knew how to get stuff done from the people that he employed, and like you said, got what he needed out of them. So it takes a very special person. Those people, this is the thing, those people are necessary.
Absolutely.
So without Stan Lee, Jack Kirby may have not succeeded on the level that people, but the problem is only one person gets the recognition. It's very rare, more so over the other. It's very rare. And it's usually the person who's a face of the company. And unfortunately, that's what happened here. Wozniak was the guy actually making these things for him. That's what he said. He's like, you're not even an engineer, and you won't even acknowledge the teams. It's all about you. That's what I mean. It's all about Steve Jobs' vision.
Well, actually, I have to push back on that one, because it wasn't about Steve Jobs. It was about the product. He didn't want to make, like, he's launching a new product.
But it's about what he wanted. It was his product.
But it wasn't about like,
it was
I need credit as Steve Jobs. I think it was more like, we're launching this.
This is the hot.
You're right. We don't need to go, talking about the past. Like we're heading towards the future. But
there's people behind this stuff. There is people behind this.
He had the right.
It doesn't just materialize.
No.
Absolutely, no.
But then there's the whole thing about, again,
they should get the recognition too. That's where I kind of didn't like that. I liked that scene that played out there, but I didn't like it in a sense because he was just being. I know they had two different visions, right? But he was just being honest with him at the moment. But then he actually got Steve Jobs to fucking say, listen, I'm honest now. Nobody leaves this fucking room until you guys.
That's what happens in creative endeavors, though, right? And unfortunately, that's what ends up happening. Is like one person's going to get more credit than the next. One person's going to get forgotten about. One person's going to they're not going to get what they want. Like it doesn't work out that way.
One person gets edited off the video. No.
So yeah, I mean, listen, that's what happens when you go and edit videos and you call the shots, and maybe
that's why he's the Woz.
So Wozniak was played by Seth Rogen, and Seth Rogen did a good job on this. I thought he did a good performance. And then there's Andy Hertzfeld, who is, I guess, like a programmer and engineer, and he's basically like Steve Jobs' whipping boy in this movie. Like Steve just fucking dismantles him until the very end, when like I feel like it gets reversed and like Andy kind of like hits him with the gut punch, and we'll talk about the details of that convo a little later.
Yeah.
Then Jeff Daniels plays.
That's Michael Stahlberg.
Michael Stahlberg. Right? Yeah, sorry if I didn't say that. Jeff Daniels plays John Scully, who is the CEO of Apple.
Of course, I went on to work with Aaron Sorkin on the Newsroom as well, right?
Yeah, Jeff Daniels. Yeah. That is right. Yeah. So he's used to saying all this like Aaron Sorkin dialogue. He's kind of already seasoned in this sort of area.
Yeah. He's also in Dumb and Dumber.
That's right.
Which, I mean, talk about range.
I know, eh?
Like you can play
straight up.
You can play like the dumbest guy alive, and then you can play the CEO of Apple, and it's like convincing. Like Jeff Daniels is an excellent actor. Absolutely. I really like him.
He's good.
So he's basically he's the CEO of Apple, but he's also kind of like in the he's kind of like the surrogate father figure kind of for Steve
Yeah, I was
Jobs
gonna
early
say that.
on. Like
Yeah.
he's sort of like a mentor kind of to Steve, and then later they turn into bitter business rivals.
They're rivals, but I don't know how bitter. I mean, I don't even know if they're really bitter rivals. They just have that relationship.
They had a little bit
It's
in
like
the
a
middle
father and
chapter.
son.
They had a little bit of a
It is
tisk,
like a father
to say
and
the
son
least.
thing, though.
To put it lightly, they had a tisk. We'll get into that too. And then so Catherine Watterson plays Chrisanne Brennan, basically Steve's baby mama, who's basically trying to like, pull him to be like a better father and stuff. And she also has her own troubles, and she has her own sort
Does
of
she ever?
she has her own
Jesus.
issues. Interestingly enough, though, I noticed she doesn't appear in the final act of the movie.
You
In
know
the third
what?
chapter, she
though?
doesn't show up.
Honestly, out of everything, I
You
think
got a sinus infection, bro.
that may have been like actually what was going on. I actually don't know the whole story behind that so much, but regardless, that's such a like I don't know, that plot point of her just dropping in and making his life miserable throughout the film.
But what do you mean? She's like disparaging her in Time magazine, saying 20%.
No,
of
I just
men in
didn't
America
appreciate-
can-
That's 30. We did the
I didn't
math
like
the
when
other day.
she showed up. I was just like, Jesus, here goes all the energy out of
Yeah.
the room. Like, you know
No,
what I mean?
no,
Like,
but it's unnecessary. I think it's necessary to tell the story of like who this guy is based on what his relationships are.
I was
you know?
mad for him though when that stuff was going on, and I'm like, I'm not supposed to feel
This guy's a-
sympathetic for this guy in this moment, but I'm
Yeah.
just like,
This guy's
I'm
an
just-
idiot. He's literally, in that sense, you
she's
made him
terrible
feel like an idiot.
too, though. She's terrible.
But I think
like,
you've seen that in her, like, they both seen each other the right way, but they weren't seeing each other.
Yeah.
good. Yeah, well put. Well put.
And then the final one, and I think this is the most important one, Lisa Brennan Jobs, who is his daughter, which I think is the basis of this whole movie, really is the relationship Steve has
Weirdly
with,
enough,
has with his daughter, which I think is, you know what though, this is to me is what good writing, good drama really is about, because when you set out to make these movies about important figures, the biopics, so to speak, you can't really make a movie about an icon. You can't do that. Like, you can't make a movie about a genius. Like, what is that even?
They do
you
it all
have
the
to-
time. What are you
No,
talking
what
about?
I mean is,
they're doing a Bob Dylan movie soon.
let me finish. Let me finish my point. You have to start at the most basic sort of thing: is who is this guy as a human being
Need a hook
first?
Yeah.
And who is this guy as a person? Number one, and
Right.
and you can tell that based on his personal relationships with all these people. And then the most important one is, who is he as a father? Who is he? How is he treating his own?
Can I tell you something though? I could have did without that whole storyline in this movie.
Are you serious?
I honestly,
Why?
That's what makes the movie.
I don't think it's bad. Hold
Oh
on,
my
let me
God.
finish my point now.
Sorry.
Okay.
I don't think it's
That's why.
bad.
That's why. Yeah.
No, I'm weird, and I could have just done with 2 hours of him creating the
yelling
iPhone,
at
creating.
people.
Yeah,
Oh my god.
But bro, that's the nerdy part of it. Yeah,
no, I'm just saying I could have
that's the technician in you.
with the dialogue, the Aaron Sorkin dialogue, and the
Yeah.
way that he set up teams. Scenes.
Yeah.
And the way everything was kind of went about, like from one scene to the next. I could have just watched 2 hours of just
Right.
that, as opposed to having this through line of an actual
Nah.
human story
Well,
throughout.
I can see how you can relate
Because
to that right now.
most
At this
biographies,
point,
even though
in your
there's
life.
a hook like
Yeah.
that with you have to kind of feel for the character, because like again, he is also a very cold individual, and that's the word I actually meant to say earlier when I said soulless about Aaron Sorkin's. It's just very cold, cold, and I think it works well for this character. But I think in that same sense, I think I actually would have just enjoyed watching 2 hours of him create one thing, because like I was disappointed we didn't see the iPhone. I'm disappointed that we only got teased by the iPod. Like, you know what I mean? Like they teased it, which is I like.
They tease a lot of stuff, and I got that written
but
down.
like I kind of would have liked to see that stuff in this movie.
I don't. And you know what? If you want to see that,
I can appreciate that they just I know the other movie.
You
I
can
know,
see this-
I know,
the
I
action
know, I
footage
know,
one.
I know,
It'll
I
be a
know.
4-hour fucking movie, bro.
I'm just saying. No,
you can't, and that's what he says. Like when Aaron Sorkin was talking about the whole process of biopic, which is actually not even a genre if you think about it, because biopics, like think of how many movies there are based on people who actually lived. They're not all in the same genre. Like Goodfellas is technically a biopic, if you want to be technical about it, and then so is Napoleon. Like they're not the same thing, right? Like they're not.
right.
They're kind of like like they're different tones. They're different.
I like the restraint that he showed in focusing on the story
I
that
love
they
it.
did. Yeah,
I love it. I think that's very
that
creative.
was what I was going to come back around to. But given the opportunity, if you were going to give me 2 hours of just
Mhm.
like, that's why like you, but you don't like that.
I
And
don't
see,
like
this
that.
is why you don't like the movies like that other one you always make fun of me for, Spotlight, because that's what it is.
Right.
The whole movie is investigative journalism the whole way through. Like, and it's
Right.
dramatic and there's great scenes and there's good actors involved, but you don't have any actual story of like a human element other than them trying to save these people that have like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Or not save, but like, you know, get basically payback for the people that got screwed over by this whole thing in that movie, right? But
I don't think you have to have a human element to it necessarily.
No.
In a sense, for you not to see a human element.
but it does make you. It does
That's a
help.
good point.
It does help with
That's
this
a good
type of person though, in this, because he's very cold. Like I said, like who would like this guy? And you're trying to find a way in. Because this guy's kind of an asshole in
let
this
you
movie.
play-
Like,
they play
ways Kind in, of.
for sure.
Yeah, I know
He
he
is
is
an
an
asshole.
asshole.
He's a-
Yeah, but
He's such a
without
jerk.
without this, and even to the daughter, he was a jerk for a little bit there in terms of like saying, not to her, but to just in general to the him saying like, she's
Like-
not my daughter. She's not my
like,
daughter. And
you see this little girl.
94%.
You see this little girl, and she's like, yeah, my dad named the computer after me. And then this guy goes out of his way
right.
to explain to this girl, do you know what a coincidence is?
But
Like,
do you ever think that maybe he was trying like not to get her hopes too high?
No, he was just
Thinking-
unnecessarily cold to her too.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Like, and
he was denying that
Maybe
he was
he
the
pushed her
father
brain?
most of the time.
if you didn't have that moment at the end of this movie where he opens up to her and says like, I'm not
I had
going
it
back to
in
the
a certain
talk,
part, and I'll tell you.
I was like, fuck this guy. Like, honestly, like they needed that part. If you didn't have that part at the end, I think you would have walked away being like, that guy's a piece of garbage.
But that's what I'm saying about like how like this is a kind of fabricated movie, because I believe that a lot of these conversations did happen with all these people.
Mhm.
It's just the way that it's set up before a product launch and all that, like the way it's so kind of neatly set up.
Right.
Obviously, it didn't happen, and that's what makes this movie like a total creation,
Right.
like a compliment to the movie. Like, this is good drama, in my opinion.
Yeah, they had to add those in and it's quick scenes, because otherwise it would be a 4-hour documentary.
Yeah, which I'm not. Yeah, you just watch the documentary, or read his book or whatever.
Yeah,
and even
Right.
the book is a certain perspective. That's the thing too, is that a lot of the writings about Steve Jobs, they don't really they don't dive deep into his relationship with his kids or whatever. And like Lisa, specifically, who is his oldest kid, she's always been like brushed away by like the media or whatever, like in terms of when they're talking about Steve Jobs' story. And only Aaron Sorkin was the one that actually saw, oh wow, okay, this is a story. She even says that she's kind of like the main thread of this movie is his relationship with Lisa. And that's what I liked about it. It's like the emotional gut punch of, this is a movie about a guy who's not treating his kid well. Like, he's not well. He's just a bad father.
Yeah, how do you?
He's a bad father,
how do
and
you
that
say to your kid
sort of. It's not about Steve Jobs, the mythical beast of Steve
Right.
Jobs or whatever. Like,
I mean, the
Which you-
whole university thing is just downright awful too. Like that, he's like, I'm not paying for it, because he was trying to stick
Yeah.
it to his ex or whatever,
Yeah,
his
yeah.
baby mother.
yeah,
But like, I get that part of it.
Yeah.
But to involve the daughter to the degree where another man steps in and pay, like that's
Yeah,
I
that's
get
a
why he
big
was.
thing.
I get why he was so pissed about
Yeah.
that. Like that's like
That's just like took his balls right out. from
right,
underneath
like
it.
how,
It's
and he's
shrunk
like,
his
of
dick up.
course I was gonna pay for it. It's like, actually, if you didn't pay for it by now, she was gonna lose her chance at getting in.
scholarship.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
her
And like,
way
so
in.
like to push it that far just to make a point because he didn't want to budge on it, like. It's just awful. It's just awful
could have had that,
behavior.
yeah,
It's
he
just
could have had that
awful
conversation,
behavior,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, that's what I mean. If you didn't have that, I think you would have stepped away from this film being like,
Well, I've seen other
This is
people
a
with
2-hour
relationships like that,
yeah,
where they don't involve the kid, where he was, which I can understand, which is that's a really good thing. Like, I mean, don't involve it.
So while I think those parts are interesting, like you said, when I said I could have done without it, I just meant I could have also just watched a 2-hour movie about him
Yeah.
creating one thing after another, just because I found that part of it so interesting. I didn't need this other subplot.
I needed that. I
Okay,
needed that.
yeah.
That's what makes the movie, to me personally, a great one. And I think it's because you're watching it as a character arc, like how he is always telling people, I'm right. No, you're wrong. I'm right. Right. Like, he's always saying, I'm right. To every character, he says, I am right.
But I would have been fine if they just made it focus on the Wazin relationship between him and Waz.
Well, you get that in there too.
Right.
You get everything.
But
You get a little bit of
if
everything, you know?
that's all I really needed, though. Like the other thing, I like the daughter stuff. I'm just saying
That's my favorite part of the movie, is the
Ah,
daughter
interesting.
stuff. To me
Okay.
personally,
It
because
is. It's very good.
like he says no, because I think it makes a good character arc, because he's going throughout the whole movie saying I'm right, and then he realizes at the end of the movie that you can't have a normal relationship with someone saying I'm right all the time. Sometimes you are wrong.
Right.
And he finally admits that to his daughter, that he was, what is the line that he says, I'm poorly made or whatever. He finally admits that he's not the perfect God Almighty guy that he's been trying to showcase to people this entire time. And that to me is like, wow, okay, that's like, that's like a relief of the movie.
That nobody's perfect.
I also think, by the way, speaking to like Danny Boyle's direction, I think it was a really good choice to have that conversation on the rooftop of the building.
Yeah.
Because I feel like this movie they're always in enclosed space. It feels very claustrophobic. And then finally when they get on the roof, it's kind of like it's like a breath of fresh air finally. Like it's like a release kind of, you know.
Yeah.
So it was a really nice choice to do that on that location. But I really like him, man. And that's the thing, is like when he says Aaron Sorkin, when he was saying like, you know, I don't want to make a movie about you going through this guy's life's like greatest hits or whatever. And it's like, he's like, it basically comes across like a Wikipedia page, and not a drama. You know?
I feel even if you were to look at the other movie, which in comparison is not well loved compared to this one, the other Steve Jobs, the Ashton Kutcher one. That is the direction they went more so in that one.
Yeah.
That being
in like one scene in that movie. Like
that being said, a lot of these biopics, though, if you do want that kind of thing, you're right. There is lots of movies that will offer that, where they just play the hit moments of this is when he did this is when he did that, this is when this happened.
And those are good. Some of those are really good too.
And that's what I'm trying to say. I kind of think I do prefer that a little bit. Yeah. That being said, I thought the daughter stuff did really work well, and I liked it, but I kind of am disappointed we didn't see creation of the phone or the iPod. Like those are big moments too.
It's the same concept though. Like you seeing them create anyways.
But I wanted to see more of the stoner moment beforehand too. That's
what
what
the hippie days.
When they were creating it in the garage.
Motorcycling through
well,
India
no, that's what would have made it a little funnier too.
Again, that's in the other movie too.
Well, that makes more sense because having the Kelso in there from the 70s show.
And in the other movie, they talked about a little bit more about his weirdness as. I mean, this is jumping ahead. There's a scene in this. Maybe you can explain it a little bit better for me. There's a whole scene where it looks like he dips his feet in the toilet.
Yeah,
that was what the fuck.
That's the question. I'm like, why did he do that?
Oh, sorry, I probably stepped on like some questions later.
No, please.
So explain. Do you know?
I have no idea. That was my question. Like, is that some genius quirk or something?
But
like,
this is what I mean. Like in the other movie, like when he got older before he died, his eating habits were very strange. Like that's something they talk about. Like he was very particular about, like he had weird quirks like most geniuses do, that they really more so focused on. I feel like from what I can remember, because it's been a long time since I've seen the other one. I only saw it once, but I believe they focus on some of his quirks as a human being in the other one. So I was wondering why they threw that scene in this one, because I'm like, what the hell's going on here? Like, did he dip his feet in the toilet? He did, right? I
think that was like a genius eccentricity or whatever.
It's like because he had to dry his feet, right? Did he dry his feet or no?
Then he put his socks back on.
This is what I'm wondering. You know how some people take their shirts off to use the washroom?
Yeah.
Maybe that was his thing. He takes his shoes and his socks off so he doesn't pee on his shoes.
Yeah, maybe.
You know, the drips from.
We should Google that, because I don't understand what that scene was. Yeah, I didn't. And the funny part about that scene was he did all that while having a great conversation with the baby mother, going back and forth. He just disappears for a second, doesn't stop talking. He's still busting out the dialogue. You see the scene of the camera though. He's taking off his shoes, and then you hear some splashing. I'm like, bro, is this guy just like watching his like? Did he have like a duvet? Like, you know, like
a god complex.
What is that thing called? Duvet or whatever.
Duvet is the one where that's the one where the water shoots up at your ass. But
bidet.
Duvet, not duvet. Bidet, yeah. I forgot the name of it. I said duvet. That's what you put on a sheet on your bed. The eye duvet, yeah. The eye toilet. That's from Curb Your Enthusiasm. George Costanza created the eye toilet, where you could tell where every toilet is in the city.
They have Bluetooth set up toilets now.
I just had a JT moment there.
another,
You did. I was
But
gonna
the
say.
bidet, but that's when they shoot the water up your ass. But
Yeah.
sometimes they have like little sinks though, like for this kind of thing. I feel like in certain maybe like rich washrooms, maybe he had one of those, right? I don't know.
So
Maybe.
I was saying earlier about how like each act of the movie is like a different Steve, basically,
Yes.
and so like one of them is like in the first one he's more of a aggressive sort of personality and or more brash, I'd say, or more just unhinged, whatever. And then in the second one, he is like tactful and more strict, a tactician, and he's kind of like Napoleon, Machiavellian, kind of whatever. And then in the third one, in my opinion, is like it's so funny because you played that Joni Mitchell song, and remember they were talking. They had that whole conversation about two different versions of the
Like Joni Mitchell, yeah,
and she's like one of them is girlish, and then there's another version
Regretful.
And I feel like that's basically the key word for the third act is.
Well, that's my favorite. That's my favorite scene with the daughter too. By the way, like that whole conversation that they have leading up to the end.
In the second act,
yeah, that's my favorite scene with the daughter. Is that I like that because he's like, "What? You think I don't know about this song? I'm so old. Like I don't know Joni Mitchell."
Yeah. In the third act, I feel like he's older, he's wiser, and then he's finally coming terms to like all the just bad decisions and bad things he's done. And that's like he's regretful. He's a regretful person. It's kind of like interesting. He became the regretful person in that sense, and he's always, you could tell he's actually being tormented by his own guilt in the movie when in that chapter of the movie when he's constantly closing his eyes and he's flashing back to earlier moments when Lisa was a child.
Yeah.
And it's kind of causing him pain because it's like karma, like guilt is its biggest karma. Like he's finally feeling the weight of the bad things that he did to her. And I don't know. It was really effective for me personally, that whole.
I just looked it up for you. He does actually do that to calm himself down.
There you go.
He puts his feet in his water, bro.
So that's like a quirky thing that he did.
Something that they
put it in. So there's like little hints.
Added that quirky.
I actually have.
Sorry, I had to look it up.
I was interested. Yeah,
I have my notes. Every time they foreshadowed an Apple product, do you want me to?
Yeah, go ahead.
A future one. So when he says at the end, when she has her Walkman or whatever, he says, "I'm gonna put music in your pocket," and he's like literally creating the iPod in his head, like somewhere between. 500. He's like deciding how much memory he's gonna put in there,
but again,
how much songs it's gonna hold.
Takes a special person to have to think of that to be like let's get this done. He may have not created it, but he created it. You know what I mean?
The practicality of it. Okay, why are you holding this brick player?
The need for doing that.
Exactly.
He knew that. Like,
and to have that eye is like that's special. To have that sort of
you need somebody like that.
Absolutely.
You need somebody like that.
So remember there's like the Apple Newton thing with the stylus, and he says if you're using a stylus you can't use the other 5 that are attached to your wrist, like your fingers, and so that's kind of like touch screen. And
do you have the Woz Apple watch scene? That's a scene.
Oh yeah,
that's
the Apple Watch.
Scene. He's actually right.
Did they have the Apple Watch in 2015?
No.
In 2015?
I don't think so.
No. So then that, I guess. But you know what? That
Maybe
scene
that
was
could have been another type, like an Android style one.
That scene was so good because
but that's what that was foreshadowing was that we were going to have electronic watches.
But it's also it's what I'm saying about his eye for practicality when he says, "Okay, change the time for me on this watch." He's like, "Okay, no problem."
The best.
Then he opens it up and it's like
it did come out in 2015.
They come out
the first one, and it was announced in 2014. So that's why they did that. That's why they did that scene.
But it's also showing his eye for practicality. Like he's opening up this thing, and then
go ahead. I'm sorry, I'm on a plane. Does this man have a bomb on
it? This doesn't look like appropriate, you know. And
also, it took like 5 minutes for him to go in and have to screw it.
It's a stupid device.
But it's an early model.
It's a device that but this guy's holding it in 1988.
It takes him 2 seconds to realize what's wrong with what he's
one's
showing
a genius and one's an artist. That's how I look at it in those two.
But that's the thing. In 2 seconds, he's able to point out what's wrong with his design. That's right.
2 seconds. That's genius.
Yeah. There's a whole section in the movie when it's like a flashback when he's in a restaurant with Jeff Daniels, John Scully, and
the father scene.
The father scene, and he talks about how like humans are inefficient animals, and then with a bicycle they become the most efficient animal on the planet, and then the computer could be a bicycle for your mind, but not just any computer, a computer that has like basically just like a regularly household appliance, like a tinsel lamp. tinsel lamp. He
I
says.
didn't notice this one.
So tinsel lamp, he says.
Okay.
So I don't know if you guys know this, but Steve is also the founder of Pixar Animation.
Oh
and
yes,
their logo is
I've heard of that before.
Is
yes.
the tinsel lamp.
Yes.
So it's kind of like there's little Easter eggs throughout.
I'm just trying to think of what the tinsel lamp.
It's the lamp of Pixar. The Pixar, you know, the one that's
Pixar Animation.
bends.
There's a lamp that
I'll have to
moves.
check,
It's
yeah.
a character essentially. Like it's basically
the lamp that has like an adjustable
and it's
joint.
the
like
eye
this,
in,
Mike,
in
basically,
Pixar.
that has a lamp.
Like
on
whenever
it.
like the movies open up, you see this lamp kind of like bouncing across the screen. Yeah.
And then so those are like inventions that he had.
I didn't realize that though. I didn't realize.
I have some fun facts. Did you want to go through them too?
What's up?
So the 1984 commercial, like the Super Bowl commercial that Apple had, like where I don't know if you've ever actually seen it in its entirety, where there's like a Big Brother.
Oh, this is the skinhead commercial
The
that he was
skinhead
talking about.
commercial,
Yeah,
directed by Ridley Scott. That commercial,
no way.
because Ridley Scott had like a history in commercials and stuff. But this was actually that commercial was made well into like Ridley's film career or whatever, right? Whatever. And so that's his he directed that commercial, and it's been cited by many publications as like the greatest commercial of all time. Like it's one of the most popular commercials.
Probably because the enormity of it. Like how like what they were trying to like show in that commercial. Right?
And you know what's the funny thing about Steve is like he kind of reminds me a little bit of like Kanye West a little bit, like his personality, like never fails short to praise himself or praise like, whatever is around him.
You ain't got all the answers.
Yeah. So he says, there's that famous rant where Kanye called himself Steve Jobs. I am Steve Jobs. I am Walt Disney and all this shit. Like, and
you know what? It's a genius thing to say.
There are similar personalities in a sense.
Yeah, but other geniuses don't compare themselves to other geniuses. That's where I feel like Kanye was.
You know what's really interesting? I mean, we're going off on a tangent right now, but the whole Kanye thing is like what I noticed about Kanye is like he's not comparing himself to rappers.
Right.
He's not saying I'm Nas, I'm Jay-Z. He's saying I'm Steve Jobs. Yeah. I'm Walt Disney. I'm like these random people. And one of the very interesting kind of facets about
Medici or whatever is like it's like some like
Google.
Some like philosopher.
Are you gonna try to marginalize
like some designer, some Italian designer that he's like comparing himself
But one of the
to.
interesting things about Steve Jobs, and like I don't know, I found it a very fascinating thing about Apple's whole marketing campaign is how they're attaching themselves to all these world figures that have nothing to do with computers. They're showing like Martin Luther King and John Lennon and Bob Dylan.
Sometimes that's why you watch those commercials and you're like, what? Like an Apple?
It's Albert Einstein listening to the iPod or something.
But that's genius marketing. It's just like, what does this have to do with the
It is, and it's like Steve Jobs, even if you go back to like even it's in the movie where he's like deciding what Bob Dylan verse to quote in a presentation for a computer.
Right.
So it's like he's always integrating these sort of outside his field figures, which I thought was like, okay, this is interesting.
Yeah.
But I was talking about earlier about his sort of like he never fails to like praise himself. When he said the commercial, that the Ridley Scott commercial, he's like, 2 days ago we aired a commercial that could have won the Oscar for best short feature or whatever, right? Like, and then he talks about the cube. He's like, look at that cube. It's like a piece of beauty. It's like this could have been housed in the Guggenheim or whatever. He's always just like everything he does is like the greatest ever.
Yeah.
So Aaron Sorkin is another.
See, this is what I'm saying. Ego. You can't tell me that's not ego.
Sometimes you need to be delusional though, like to be successful. Like you gotta have to. Like if you don't believe in yourself, no one will.
Yeah, but that's again. There's just certain individuals like that, right?
Yeah, it's rare. They're very rare personalities.
Yeah.
So Aaron Sorkin has a real connection to the real Steve Jobs.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So Steve Jobs has this very famous speech that he gave at Stanford. You can look it up on YouTube, the Stanford commencement speech. And Aaron Sorkin did like a grammar proofreading of it or whatever. So they actually have like a real life connection. Another fun fact. So Steve Jobs didn't actually debut the black turtleneck look until 2002. Like when he dressed up like that.
Right.
But the filmmakers like Danny Boyle, Michael Fassbender, they kind of wanted to put that in the movie as sort of like an emotional payoff for the audience because this is the most iconic look. It's almost
probably
weird.
Because again, they also weren't giving us those other products.
Yeah.
Because that's what we signify. Everything. That's what we think of They had to put that. You're right. Yeah, I think
they
that's
squeezed
why.
everything into the movie, like a little bit of everything, like of what Steve is, but like they did it just so briefly that they don't really like harp on it. So yeah, they wanted to give this like this emotional payoff. It was almost weird seeing in the earlier scenes like Steve Jobs not wearing it, like he's wearing like a suit and stuff. I was like, oh, okay, shit. Oh, I also forgot to mention earlier about like the sort of the foreshadowing of products. There's this one scene at the very end of the film when he's in his dressing room in the third act of the movie, and he's looking over this table, okay, and the table is lit up. It's lit like it's like a white screen almost that's glowing off the table's glowing kind of thing. It's a light that's emanating off his face.
Yeah, I don't know if I remember that.
Go back and look at it. There are like little colorful pieces of paper or whatever. It looks like an iPhone. The table looks like an iPhone, and the pieces of paper that are all different colors, they look like the apps or whatever on the phone. Like,
so you're saying that they were kind of putting.
I think they were visually referencing the iPhone in that
he was already thinking about it.
I don't know if he was thinking about it, but I think it's just like a little cue that this is like an iPhone, and he's like, it's like a table.
Bring it down in price.
That's literally the size of your table here, and he's like looking over it, and there's all these colorful stuff on it. It's yeah, and so that was cool. So here's another fun fact. This is the last one. So Steve Jobs' biological sister in real life, Mona Simpson, they only mention her by name one time, Mona. She says Mona when he says that she was the one that found his father in the restaurant or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. She was married to a Simpsons writer. Like Mona Simpson, she was married to a Simpsons writer, and they named Mona Simpson after Mona Simpson was named the real Mona Simpson, they named another character in The Simpsons after her. Homer's mother was named Mona Simpson. That was named after his sister. And there's also a scene in the movie when
where they show
the Newton and they show a clip of The Simpsons. So I thought that was like an interesting kind of like callback, like an interesting connection to Steve Jobs' history. It's just like he's all over the place. Like he has a hand in everything.
Well, yeah, you create something or help create something like these, like the iPhone or the iPod or the iMac. Then right there, those are three revolutionary kind of products, right? Yeah,
change the world regardless.
I think without him, they've really just been doing more of the same. Honestly, like I'm actually saddened that he died the time he did because
nobody's envisioning further than that.
I don't know where who knows what else he could have cooked up by this time, right?
Absolutely.
We didn't even need phones. We could have probably went like this and just pops up.
Oh yeah. You know, this is like not related to the movie, but more like to the real life Steve Jobs. If you go on like a YouTube deep dive of like Steve Jobs's like actual footage of him talking about stuff, it's really like interesting. Like he had just a very interesting mind and stuff, and how he thought about things. And he was saying how the goal of computing was to create a computer that was very, very easy for anyone to use. But in order to do that, it had to be a very sophisticated computer. Like the computer technology had to be very sophisticated in order for anyone to use it. And the final model, in my opinion, of what computers have sort of basically become is the smartphone. Yeah. Because this smartphone is such a simple device. You put it in a 3-year-old's hands, they can know how to use it, or they can fiddle around with it.
You can literally do everything you can
do everything on it. And it's literally like we have come to the point where we don't even leave our house without a supercomputer in our pocket, basically.
Well, that was his whole thing that he envisioned was accessibility, though, and making it easy for people to
businessmen to leave and all that shit that they were saying, right? Like
his whole thing was trying to make things more simple for people so that everybody could enjoy them.
Did it though, or did it make it more difficult?
Well, you know what's funny, which is something that I personally don't like about Apple computers. Well, I say this while recording on an Apple computer,
and we're on the other side.
Yeah, and I have an iPhone right here. But what I don't like about it, which they talked about in this movie, is that his resiliency to even have any products compatible with it. Yeah. Like so much so, like that whole Woz conversation at the start with the Apple II, I think it was called, right? Yeah, about how he was like, oh, we need 6 ports in this. No, 2 ports. One for this, one for that. Yeah, that's all you need. Nothing else. Like, you know what I mean? And Apple's like that. They don't want you to have other fucking programs on it.
End-to-end control.
Yeah. It's which is bullshit, because I feel like having like that's why people like PC and Android when it comes
Yeah.
to phone, because you can do whatever and put whatever on those phones and customize it the way you want it. Where Apple, it's like, no, these are your options. This is
Well,
how you have to
Buy
you,
it or don't.
yeah, exactly.
That's
If you
what he
want a
says.
program, you have to use our programs. If you
Well-
want, but that's just again a marketing idea that's smart for the company.
That was
like,
smart in the
terms
beginning,
of,
but I
like-
mean, nowadays people have come to that thing where you can always add stuff onto your Apple right now.
Like
if you do.
jailbreak your iPhone.
well,
or
like,
whatever, like
yeah, that or what do you call it? Add apps that aren't compatible that they usually say with an
Right.
iPhone. But at the end of the day, it's okay to have that and have somebody else try to get into there and try to help. But if you're not taking the actual technology away from it and you're just adding to it,
but
it's almost intuitive itself.
But I also think it's interesting because his way of thinking was our product's the
letting you
best.
build my brain. That's what he
Our
felt
product
like
is the best.
Yeah.
So why would you want anything else anyways? Like that's what he was thinking
Yeah.
of it, right? But
I also look at it as like an artist. Like he doesn't want anyone messing with his canvas. Like this is
So
mine.
true too.
And don't touch it. That's this is what I created. Not I created, but this
Right.
is what we've created.
right.
Yeah.
And this is what you get, and be happy with that. Like
But he
because-
didn't
and it's the
even
best
say we
thing ever,
created. He
right?
just said he created at the end of that's really he was just saying he created. He was the envisioned of seeing
Yeah.
it go as far as it went, but I don't think he just is the only person that created.
Why do I keep reading
he
about
didn't.
how you're the genius? Yeah, Steve.
Yeah,
right,
how
right,
come
yeah,
I
yeah,
read
yeah,
10
yeah.
times in a day that
Yeah.
you're a genius?
And I'm not even mentioned.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you know what? There's that interesting sort of callback earlier because right before that,
Man's got a
scene-
point. Oh, that's one of the best parts about this movie are the callbacks. There's a couple
So
of
many.
callbacks. Yeah,
Do
there's a
you
couple.
have a couple?
Oh
you
yeah,
wanna
when we
to?
get into scenes. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Whenever you guys are done with talking about
I
your
just-
thoughts.
You know what? I just want to because I feel like I barely spoke about it. I just want to touch on Danny Boyle just for a bit. I really think he did a great job directing this movie. I think Danny Boyle to me, he's sort of like a chameleon of a director. I
Yes.
feel like there are two types of directors. There are like ones who have a very identifiable
Yes.
style, and then there's ones who kind of have no style
I
because
agree.
they can kind of just
I agree.
fit in any shoe. Like think of all the genres that Danny Boyle has.
I mean,
dived into.
Train Spotting's like my favorite, and he does so many crazy experimental
He's
things in
done a
those
zombie
films.
movie.
He did Train Spotting,
Yeah.
Danny Boyle, and he also did 28 Days Later, the zombie movie.
Come on.
Yeah, but this is what he's trying to say.
Yeah.
You don't identify this movie because this is very straightforward, not flashy. This is
No.
like as far as I'm concerned, this is a very not flashy experimental type of directed film. This one, I would say,
Right.
right?
No,
like
no,
I think
I
it's
agree.
very, which I think this type of material and with Aaron Sorkin writing your script needed. Like
Yeah.
this just needed a straightforward kind of like director who's a good director that will direct the film well, but not trying to do any kind of crazy flashy
So-
stuff. But other films of his, like Train Spotting, for instance, all kinds of weird stuff
Weird
that he
stuff,
does in
yeah.
that movie. Yeah, like which is like
He
you
can
know
do any genre.
Yeah.
He kind of reminds me of like a Ridley Scott or like a Steven Spielberg.
he's British, I
kinda
think,
like-
right? I think
Yeah,
he's,
they're both British,
yeah.
So each act of the film is filmed using a different format. So the first act is filmed with 16 millimeter cameras. The second act is 35 millimeter, and then
I
the
didn't
third
know
one,
that.
the third one is digital. They completely filmed it in digital. So they're using
Was that
if
why
you
the
I didn't know
screens kept
that.
going
if
different
you
on that?
recognize if you go to the first act, the film is kind of grainy, like
Right.
the
Yeah,
picture quality.
I was
It's
wondering.
because that's
Well, fuck my. This wasn't very flashy
Yeah.
fucking comment.
No,
man. I just didn't realize
but-
that.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not flashy, but I think that's interesting. I didn't notice that.
and
Well, the first scene it was black and white on the fucking
Right.
little fucking thing like this.
and the thing is, it's just because
Did you hear? Sorry,
Go ahead.
did you hear what he's filming? The new 28 Days Later. He's doing a
28
third one.
weeks he's doing on an iPhone.
28 years. Yes,
Yeah.
he's using an iPhone
Yeah.
to film his new 28 Years Later film, which is the third film in the series of this.
Which my friend actually
Outbreak film.
Try
educated
an Android.
my my friend actually educated me about this a little bit, that a lot of movies actually these days are filmed on iPhones.
Yep.
But they're like juiced up. They have like special lenses attached to them. It's not just the
The
regular
cameras are
iPhone.
probably a lot different. Yeah. I
Yeah,
would
they're
think.
like they have an iPhone, but like a lens that's a huge lens attached to it, and so it's like it's juiced up. It's like
Right.
it's not just a regular.
Still pretty cool.
No, it's really cool. It's very
Yeah.
practical
because
too.
the original 20 he just uses a camcorder.
Yeah.
Camcorder, it's shaky and it's
Uh,
fucking
here's
weird,
another
yeah.
thing that like
plays for the fear. of
Like
it.
that. See, he clearly likes. That's actually pretty quite impressive that
It
he can
is.
do all these fucking formats. I did not know that
Yeah,
about
yeah.
this movie. That's
and you
impressive.
stitched it together, and
That's impressive.
the reason why I was like really interested in that because knowing that David Fincher was originally supposed to direct it, I'm
Oh,
kind of like seeing
He's
like
insane.
I don't think David would have done that. at all. Like because he never does. Like
It's Mr.
like
Fincher
to do
you.
different types of formats of different.
He shoots in film though, doesn't he?
He shoots in film, but that's what I'm saying. Like he wouldn't have done like 16 to 35, like
No.
a different chapter.
He's
being
a traditionalist.
He's got no like a David Fincher film. The first frame looks like the
He
last.
must know how to do it though, because he used to do music videos.
I'm saying, of course he would know how to do that, but I'm just saying he wouldn't creatively. That was not a choice he would have made. I feel like,
right.
And it's the same thing that's in the score of the movie by Daniel Pemberton. He did like it's just this whole mentality of like this is the time, the year that it's set in. Have the format appropriate for that time setting. So he made like the electronic music in the first act completely analog, like with the hardware, and then the second act of the film that takes place in an opera house, he did like more of like an orchestral sort of sound. It's almost like a ballet kind of music. And then in the third act of the film, he used completely digital, like music made through digital means. And so it's the kind of interesting how they're going a different mindset, a different sort of way of how to tackle each kind of chapter, trying to make it distinct from one another.
There is a good quote too for that in that whole about that what you were just saying there. But
do you want to go ahead and spill it, or do you want to get it later?
You can throw it out there now.
After it was about.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh no, go.
I was just quickly going to say though, it's funny that you say that about Fincher being almost involved with this film because Fassbender ended up working with him in The Killer.
Yeah.
Right.
And this.
Hey, you remember that, AJ? I know you really like that movie. That was Fassbender in The Killer too.
Yeah.
That was Fincher and Fassbender in The Killer movie that was on Netflix.
Yeah.
Because Fincher has had a Netflix contract for a few years here. That's why everything he's been doing has gone straight to Netflix, right? Yeah. But Fassbender, you know what's interesting? I will say about Fassbender. I said to Christine when I was watching this the other day, because she was watching a bit of it with me when I had it on. I was like, I never think of him as a really good actor in my mind. Like, I don't think whenever I think of great actors that I enjoy, it's not like his name ever pops to the top of the list for me, but he's very good in lots of things. I love him in Magneto. I love him in Inglourious Bastards. Love as the years have gone on, his Inglourious Bastards scenes,
the British,
in that bar in the basement is one of my favorite. Like, he's so good in that scene. Honestly, one of the best things about that movie. I love him.
Oh, he's a great actor.
Bastard. I love him as Magneto. Like, Killer was good. Like he's actually a really good actor, and I never think of him. Honestly,
this might be my favorite performance by him. Honestly,
for me, it might be that Inglourious Bastards, him in that movie. But I think it's because I love that movie so much, though. But he's really good.
This one was really good. This one, I think he did really good. From what I seen him in now, that he said that what it was, I couldn't really put faces at it. I didn't look back into it enough.
Right.
But yeah, no,
And the thing is, it's like traditionally when they make these types of movies, they always go for actors that will look like the character that they're playing. So I guess of the actors I mentioned earlier, probably Christian Bale probably resembles.
No, I think he's pretty good. I just looked up Steve Jobs, and they did a pretty good job of making him look.
Well,
like
in the final act, it's the most obvious because all you have to do is have gray hair and do the glasses, and then that's it. But like in the earlier chapters, it's like looks nothing like Steve Jobs. But I don't think that even matters because this is such a created narrative. It's like a paint, like it is a creative setting.
I don't think anybody really goes back to look at the younger Steve Jobs in a sense as much as they do for the one that became successful.
To your point though about what you were saying though, it's like that could be done so badly though sometimes. There's a movie that I talked about on the last time that I was on the show, and I think it was on Julie's list as well about things we wanted to check out that were coming out. I finally watched that Saturday Night movie that's based on the first episode of Saturday Night Live when they were creating it, like behind the scenes, like before they went live with it. And that film, that's what they try to do. They try to cast all these people to play these characters from Saturday Night Live. So you got a guy playing Chevy, you got a guy playing Dan Aykroyd. It comes off as so corny sometimes when they cast these, because they're trying to cast people, like you said, that either look like the person or they try to make them look like the person. And unfortunately, it's hard sometimes to separate the person that who's playing them, because it's them just basically doing a bad version, like an imitation of this person in a way. So like it could come off very kind of like cringy at times, where you're just like, oh, this is like this guy's trying to be Chevy Chase. I'm like, he's the worst Chevy Chase I ever see. You know what I mean? Like, and then you got to believe in your mind. Your mind has to try to be like, oh, that's Chevy Chase. So the whole time we're watching the movie, me and Christine are like, who's that? Is that supposed to be Aykroyd? We're trying to figure out like who's who, like out of the actors, because sometimes they come on screen, you're like, that's so and so, but some other times you're like, I don't even know who this is, and then all of a sudden they talk, you're like, whoa, that's supposed to be Chevy Chase. This guy's a bad Chevy Chase, you know, because they're doing versions of those characters, and I feel like it's a hard place for an actor to be in, because it's like you're being judged on that, and to your point, he must have did a good job as Steve Jobs, because not once during the film did I feel that way. Like I wasn't like,
I felt like he was Steve Jobs.
Yeah. Not once was I like,
I don't know much about Steve Jobs.
Ross Bender's doing a bad version of Steve Jobs. It's like an SNL sketch. Exactly.
It's almost like the fast was like the even though it's not fast with the T, but the fast was it actually helped out that role. I thought about that. I was like,
I wanted to actually. You brought up a point by bringing that whole Saturday Night Live thing. Mm-hmm. The thing about I wanted to say how this is such a intended creation by Aaron Sorkin. How this is like his It's like he says, he uses the analogy. This is a painting, not a photograph. We use your dramatic liberties to tell this story. If you go and watch what Steve Jobs sounds like, he doesn't sound like Aaron Sorkin. He's not, you know what I mean? Like he's not, he's not going at the fast pace. This is what Aaron Sorkin is known for. Yes. This is why you watch an Aaron Sorkin movie is to watch very quick-witted dialogue that's very well written. Yeah, it's and
this was very well written. It's just it was hard to it was fast.
Here's the thing.
So that's Sorkin though.
That's Sorkin. That's his style. So
2 hours went by, but it was like it went by.
I don't know if you guys
very
know this.
Snappy dialogue.
I don't know if you guys know this, but like the sort of the standard usually is like the average usually is when you're reading a script or whatever for a movie, a minute of dialogue, a page of the script usually translates to a minute of the dialogue.
It's crazy.
For Sorkin scripts, it's like 8 pages per minute. Like
wow.
Yeah,
no wonder I have fucking so much written out.
It's everything. So actors have to actually learn how to say, and I watched a featurette for the Social Network. They were really struggling. Like,
is he one of those guys like the Coens that you can't change any of his dialogue either? Because that's the thing that people are kind of checking it out.
I don't know if you can change or not, but then why would you? It's like
I agree.
You're talking about
you want to learn it, like
Boyle or Sorkin.
Aaron Sorkin,
Aaron Sorkin, the writer.
Okay.
So like he's somebody who is like in how like we always talk about how great certain directors are on this show. He's somebody that directors want to team up with because he's a great screenwriter. So he writes a very, very good script,
detailed script.
He's one of the few people that people recognize as like a director in that sense. Like you know what I mean? Like because he has an identity.
Your head,
Yes.
Do you know what auteur theory is?
No.
There's like this film sort of critique about how and
I don't know too much about Sorkin. I'm just saying like that's what I know of it, right?
There's this sort of like it's like a whole debate in like film criticism where they say that like a director is like the most important voice on a film or whatever, like the most important. So because
it's his vision,
it's his vision and his identity or whatever. I feel like when it comes to Aaron Sorkin's movies that he's attached to,
whether shadows the director,
100%. It doesn't even matter.
Sorry to stature at your point there, but I knew that's where you were going with
because
it.
It doesn't it doesn't always translate like that because
this is just a theory. This is not like a fact or anything.
I think you're right because sometimes they don't always mesh well together. I think in the sake of the Social Network, that was a very good
marriage, the style,
This one, I would say it's more Sorkin than Boyle, honestly. But Boyle is doing the job. Boyle isn't like that's why I said he's not really doing anything too crazy.
No, he's just bringing it to life.
Right. But like A Few Good Men, he wrote that too.
Absolutely.
Sorkin. Like that's that famous Jack Nicholson scene. Yeah, that's his dialogue. That's Sorkin.
See,
you can't handle the truth.
Yeah, those and these guys like Sorkin will get recognized on the thing as the screenwriter. Right under the director, where some people don't get recognized, right? Like big like that. I guess that's what it means too, right?
That's why Quentin Tarantino thinks highly of himself too, because he is the person that writes his scripts as well. Where a lot of these directors, they'll adapt the script, but they don't actually write it. Quentin Tarantino writes everything first, so like that's his whole thing too, because but the thing is that's why everyone was pissed because he didn't win the screenplay, because he should have won it for screenplay writing back in Pulp Fiction days, but he didn't. right? So
Yeah.
he didn't win until I think
He won the Oscar for Pulp Fiction.
was it Pulp Fiction? No,
Yeah.
sorry. He always wins for screenplay, not
Never for
director.
director,
That's it. Sorry,
okay.
I knew it was one.
Okay.
Sorry, I knew it was one or the other.
Okay.
Because they always give him an award for his writing, but not his direction.
His direction.
Yeah, that's sorry. That's the
That's a
thing.
weird one, eh?
But-
well, it's kind of a big snub by them.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's kind of like
People say he
should
should have.
both.
People say
asshole.
he should have won for Pulp Fiction. People say. From
Oh,
that
yeah.
year. But
for sure.
I mean that's another
We
conversation.
can get into Oscar conversations later because
We
there
need to
might
do a
be
whole show on
some
Oscars. Yeah,
there might be
fuck.
some involved with this movie too that I
Okay.
can mention. But
Interesting.
Aaron, so I was gonna say like the whole thing about it doesn't even matter who directs Aaron Sorkin's scripts.
Right.
Like he becomes the primary sort of author of
Right.
the movie. Like I even feel like even with The Social Network in the case of David Fincher, people refer more to Aaron Sorkin. That was
Yes.
a movie by Aaron Sorkin or whatever, right?
Yes.
And like for example, Moneyball. Do you even know who directed that movie? I know, but do you?
I did know, but I can't remember right
That's
now.
what I'm saying. Like, but
Yeah.
he eventually did go into directing himself, Aaron
Yes.
Sorkin. Like, I think Molly's Game was his first one
Yes.
that he directed. But he's been writing scripts for 2 decades plus, TV
Right.
shows, and I can only think of one other screenwriter that has that kind of cachet, that kind of like
David Mamet.
not David Mamet, but maybe him too. But I was
Glenn Ross.
I was gonna say Charlie Kaufman, who wrote
Yeah.
Being John Malkovich
Yeah.
and Adaptation.
That's
and
right.
It doesn't matter
Adaptation,
who,
yeah.
like, because Spike Jonze directed his films, and then Michel Gondry directed Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, which is another Charlie Kaufman. It doesn't even
I
matter.
didn't realize.
Like
yeah.
we know those movies for Charlie.
But that's what's
Kaufman,
great
kind
about a good screenplay writer is because their voice comes out in the end.
of. I also wanted to say, did you have a section where you talked about parallels and stuff and like
In the
callbacks
scenes?
and should we
Yeah.
move into that?
Yeah, go ahead. Well, I mean, we can get into scenes if you want to talk.
Let's
about
go into
that.
scenes because
Sure.
we've talked like
Yeah.
An hour and a half
Yeah.
already.
of just general.
And I mean, I didn't even mention, but I think we mentioned it in the course of talking. Like JT, this was probably my second time watching this. I watched it once years ago,
I
forgot
watched it
about
3
it.
times.
Oh, you
I
watched
told
it?
you I watched it once years ago, like you, and then
Right,
I tried watching it last night, but I was only listening to it,
right.
the dialogue, and then I actually watched the actual movie today when you actually can put the dialogue with the actual scenes. Kind of made a whole different perspective. It was weird how I played it out in my head.
Right.
Yeah, because I don't know. I don't think the first time I got through it the whole time, like the whole thing. I don't think it was for me. I think I might have sat through the whole thing. I just man, that was many years ago, right? So
So the one scene that I wanted to talk about in this, like one of my favorite scenes, I mean, honestly, like for me, I think the Wozniak confrontations were the best part of this film. There's two big scenes with Wozniak showing up. One showing up to the next computer when he kind of confronts him and he's like, I'm just here for you as a friend because I know this is gonna fail.
Yeah.
And this is the whole thing where he's like, you get a pass. That's one of the lines that they have a callback to later on
Absolutely.
about how he says he's giving him a pass and
Wozniak finds that very condescending.
right.
And
And he
then
says
he
that.
says
It's
that
like,
in
how
quote.
condescending is that you're saying this?
And that's the crazy thing is he says it again to him a second time,
Right.
even like years later, even though he says like
Right.
that's a pretty.
I don't
shitty
think
thing
he
to say.
realizes it.
You know, he says you get a pass. Like when he's on the stage in the
That's
third
right.
chapter, he says you get a pass, and then he calls him an asshole. Like right
Yeah.
after that, you know. So that was one of those.
But those scenes of him confronting it, and I remember hearing Seth Rogen talk about his involvement in this film, and he said this is the most challenging acting he's ever had to do up to this point, because obviously in the Apatow films there's a lot of improvisation.
Yeah.
They're just he's
shit.
getting
They're all
high,
friends,
he's
yeah.
going around. Okay, yeah, they're all friends, and he's having a good time doing it. And he's usually playing characters that are somewhat like himself.
There's a sense in those movies that they're probably like riffing on the spot, kind of like in those Apatow
Yeah.
films.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that's most of it. What it is.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
he kind of created that.
Friends
kind of
taking out
yeah.
or whatever, right? And then, but this, I can imagine this being very difficult for a lot of actors because you have to get adjusted to that Aaron Sorkin rhythm
Yes.
where you're talking very fast and
So
you're saying a lot of words.
He
per
talked
minute.
publicly about how like difficult it was for him to remember this whole this whole speech that
Yeah.
he did. He's like, to kind of do those kind of monologues that I did in this film. He's like, it was very difficult for him to memorize all of that stuff, right? Like,
Yeah.
which I can imagine. But and he kind of thought he didn't know like how well he did in his performance, but he was like proud of the fact that he actually
He did a good job.
I
This
think
is a very good
I think
performance
he's
by Seth.
great. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Like for me, like I was just like, wow, like look at like Rogan really brought it.
No, he did.
With Fassbender, honestly.
Good
I felt
casting,
like,
too. I
yeah,
think
You
he
like
had to remember the scenes. Do you think they had it on an Apple computer in the background so he was getting it?
no, he's on
projected
cue
to?
card reading. Get out of here, bro. Come on. Now
I'm
it's
just
all
saying
big.
it's the movie. I'm just sorry. I'm just saying, yeah. Since the movie is
No,
about
get out of here.
you know, TV screens and shit and
so,
boxes.
Another callback I wanted to bring attention to was in that same scene. He says, "I'm here to support you as a friend because that's what men do." And then later on, did you have this one too?
Yes.
Later on, he confronts. He has a conversation with John Scully, like in the back
Yes.
room or whatever, and he says, "You know."
And he's like, "Don't touch Waz." Yeah, like
I'm always gonna have his back because that's what
right.
men do.
That's
He says
right.
The same line.
That's
to him
the
back.
and whenever that happened, I was like, "Ooh, like that's so genius!" Like I was just like, "How impressive was that?" Like the callbacks, and dialogue, because it could go right past. You may not even notice it, but that's how well done it is layered.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you know what I mean? Those conversations.
And
great call.
Here's the thing: I have a lot of them written down, but the thing I wanted sort of to make a point with them is that, you know, Aaron Sorkin, he always sort of gets credit for, I guess, when the trademark word for him is, oh, he's a great writer of dialogue. But I think he's also just excellent as a whole narrative structure. It's just from top to bottom. It's just very well interconnected. I feel like he just knows. He's just a great writer.
I will see with a lesser writer behind the scenes in these films, like Social Network or this. These scenes are boring. Like without like a good,
absolutely,
without a good writer and to make these scenes as riveting as they are, like they're talking about people stealing ideas and like, you know what I mean? Like just stupid shit like that. Like where you're like, this is not exciting. Like, but he makes these scenes riveting through the dialogue. Like that's very difficult to pull off, quite frankly. Like that's because like, they're talking about like, you know, creating computers and stuff like that. Who wants to see it? Like if I just sold you on the basis of, hey, I'm going to get, you know, that's the plot of this film. That doesn't sound that interesting.
That scene in the where they're arguing, like him and his wife. Okay. She goes onto the computer, the daughter, he makes her go onto the computer and do that.
And she draws the thing in paint.
She already knew what the computer was, obviously, right? I mean, so this is where he's trying to, this is where you actually see a different part of the movie where like, okay, he puts her on the computer, has the argument with the wife about all that shit, and then goes back to see what she did, and she called it abstract. Which was what it was, right? He was surprised that she even knew how to get into it's just knowing that it was that user friendly for even a kid,
right?
You know, it kind of made you think. And then he showed her how to save and click. I like that scene. That actually, those scenes I think with the daughter made you start. Those scenes help realize what kind of person he was eventually. Right? It might have took long, but they were very.
I'm glad you like that.
They were very meaningful, bro. They were very meaningful because she was the future that he's been talking about for how long?
Yeah,
that he was envisioning,
right?
And he just proved it right there, but nobody still sees it, right?
Well, the thing is, he was always talking about, oh, you know, we're seconds away from helping out school children, and we donate
money,
to schools and stuff, and it's like you have a child right there ready for your help, and it's like, why aren't you doing that?
That's the other thing with the kid too,
like
though,
hypocrisy,
like how he tried to lie and say that Lisa wasn't named after her. Like, what the fuck was that?
That's real life. That's real life. That's
terrible.
Happened.
That's
terrible. That happened.
How
in
do
real
you tell
life.
your daughter that? That's fucking whatever. How old was she
at that point? He wasn't even acknowledging her as her daughter.
Yeah.
But dude, how are you not 94% not the daughter? Like you are the father. How you're at 94%? I think anything over 80 you're the father. I'm pretty sure, dude. Anything over 50%, he would be the father, right? But if we did on that scene when we go back to that scene and you guys are saying and we said 28% of the population, that crap, you know, that was 32,000 men in the US in 1985. If you do the actual math on how many men were in the US, is what they said,
right?
That's 32,000. How the fuck is that humanly possible to sleep with 32,000 men?
Yeah,
or even one of those 32,000.
It was a horrible thing he said. He was basically calling his girlfriend or ex-wife or whoever she was like
a whore.
Ex-girlfriend. Yeah, like basically like
Okay, he had his issues with her. I get it, but those are different.
But you're saying that in a publication that everyone across the country.
Well, actually, he didn't put I don't think he put that in the publication, did he?
No, he said that. Those are his words. Like 28% of American.
That's what she says that the publication said that he said about her.
Yeah, which if-
yeah. I just want to add on earlier about the Waz things, though. I forgot to mention, though. Again, like my understanding of this, him as a character in this movie is because he was too focused on his own goals. He didn't take the time to realize about what the other people around him were going through or acknowledge them either, because he was so self-absorbed. Like that was his issue, right? Like I feel like, and like I'm so happy that they had that character in this, or that he actually had somebody like this in his life, if that's what he was to him, because you need somebody like that in your life that's not afraid to tell you where you're going wrong with like stuff.
They know each other before they were famous.
Well, that's
so
what you think. Like, I don't know who this whole person. I know who this person is.
You
invented this. I was with you back in the garage. Yeah, which is line. Like even when you first learned about Steve Jobs, that was what everyone talked about. Is the story that this man created this computer in his garage, right? Like that's what was so impressive about it. But I'm actually really just happy. I wanted to mention that about it. That character is that he needed somebody like that in his life to tell him when he was wrong, right? And he didn't really have anybody else other than him and Kate. What's her name?
Kate Winslet. Joanna Hoffman.
Right. And shout out to Michael Stolberg. All his scenes, whenever that guy, I just recently remembered he was that guy for years for me. Whenever that guy shows up in something, he's always excellent. Always good. It could be the biggest piece of crap movie, and he is great in it. Like he's great. Michael Stolberg, he was in like Boardwalk Empire. He's the guy that plays that guy at the programmer that at the start of
Eddie
it.
Hertzfeld. The
Hertzfeld,
one that is like threatening him, basically.
So you're basically, your name is the one that I'm going to use. I can't say hello.
He's in that that one show about the pills, the dope sick one. He's the guy. He's the company. He runs the company.
I don't think there's a bad performance of the 6 main actors in this movie. I don't think there's a bad performance in this entire movie. Like they all killed it. Like Jeff Daniels, Kate Winslet, Seth Rogen, like. All of them were great, and Michael Fassbender, I think, was the best. Like he really shined in my opinion in this role.
Right.
I have some callbacks and some kind of parallels. If I can run them down. So there's the whole subplot of like Steve Jobs won't acknowledge the Apple II team or whatever. That is, Wozniak. There's that whole like riff or whatever. That whole argument. I feel like that is like a very clever way of mirroring what the main plot of the movie was, which is Steve not acknowledging his own daughter. Yeah. So I thought that was sort of like an interesting, like kind of parallel relationship that was happening in that sense. So I don't know if you guys caught this. So there is this scene when he's being, speaking of that guy, he's being followed by that journalist. That remember that journalist, that guy that's like
he is that guy. He's in lots of things. Also good.
He's a great actor. He was great in this, but I forgot his name.
He was just in that show we just watched recently, the Vince Vaughn one.
He's in a lot. He's in a bunch of stuff.
He's his buddy in the.
I'll never forget. He was in Miami Vice.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
He's like I'm a disco guy or whatever.
Yeah, that's right.
Joel
Ortiz.
Bad Monkey. He's the guy who's the friend in Bad Monkey. He's in that.
He's the one who brings the art.
Yeah. It's his friend.
I was like, where did I see him before?
So,
lots of things.
There's a scene where they're walking down a hallway and they see a picture of Alan Turing, and the guy says, "Who's that?" And he's like, "That's Alan Turing," or whatever. Right after they cut to after that scene, they show a picture of Steve Wozniak, which I always felt like was a connection to being made between Alan Turing, a guy who contributed so much to society, but people don't know who that is. Recognize and the big guy that was the picture that was on the wall, and the guy says, "Who is that?" And he says, "That's Alan Turing." And the guy says, "Oh, who's that?" He's like, "Well, he's not going to be part of our campaign." He's like, "Why is that?" "Because you had to just ask me who he was or whatever." And then they cut to Steve Wozniak in the auditorium sitting, and I'm like, okay. This is right before they have that whole argument in that auditorium room. And I'm like, okay, this is the filmmakers. This is Sorkin trying to make the connection between Steve Wozniak, a guy who was a prodigy in engineering, like the stuff that he was able to accomplish. The people, the veterans in the industry were like amazed by what Steve Wozniak could do. This is a guy who did so much.
Yeah. And,
he's been forgotten. He's, school children don't know about it. Even says, Steve actually has the line. He's like,
who's doing that?
They should make statues of these people, and of Alan Turing. They should have statues of him, and he should be on the lips of every school children or whatever. And then remember earlier in the scene, and earlier in the movie, Steve Wozniak was like, "How come Lisa doesn't know me?" He's like, "Well, shit, man. How many fourth graders do know you or whatever, right?" And I think that was sort of like the connection of like these guys are like great contributors to our modern society, but just people have kind of just don't recognize them.
Right.
Later in the movie, he says basically like Wozniak is the modern day Alan Turing, basically. Like that's sort of what I got from that. Later he says he disparages Wozniak. He kind of insults him. He says, if it weren't for me, you'd be the easiest A in Homestead High School or whatever. Like you basically be like basically a high school teacher is what I kind of understood that line to be. And I've just found it interesting that Steve, he's always quoting and recognizing all these virtuosos in history, like, but he's not doing the same for Wozniak, who is basically that.
He does a really bad job of bringing people up with him.
Yeah.
He's just all, again,
maybe that could just be because they know each other. They have that sort of like comfortability. They don't really look at each other as icons, so to speak. So Wozniak is kind of confused, like, why are people so mystified by you? And then Jobs is looking at Wozniak like, bro, you wouldn't have been anything without me.
It takes a certain type of person to sell yourself on that level. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Again, I hate to make the comparison, but it's the same thing with the Stan Lee, Jack Kirby.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very good example.
He was the face of that company. He knew how to talk to people. Jack Kirby spent all his time behind a desk drawing. He was not a good social person.
Yeah.
But who's the one that's creating the thing that everybody loves?
Yeah, Stan Lee. And he was also interacting with the audience. And
no, Jack Kirby is. He's the one drawing all the comics.
No, but Stan Lee is interacting with the audience like, hey, Marvelites, how's it going?
This is the thing,
Excelsior and all this
stuff.
This is the
thing. This is why it goes back and forth to the end of time.
Some people have, hard
time doing both. You need both elements.
Yeah, there's two. Sometimes you don't have two elements.
The thing is,
in one person.
Right. But the thing is, whether or not the other person is able to rest on their laurels and be happy with what they have and what they're doing in life, which many people are, and especially if everybody's getting the spotlight, one person's getting all the spotlight. Pride too, of course.
Pride comes into play in that game.
Yeah.
So big time.
Because if you were going around telling people, hey, I created that, they're like, what are you talking about? Steve Jobs created that. It's like, no, he didn't. I created that.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Actually, why is your face not on there? Right? That's exactly
why. You know what's actually crazy? Because we were talking about the whole reality distortion field thing earlier. Right. Remember when he's like deciding like what shark to use as a backdrop on the screen or whatever on the projector? The guy says, how come I wasn't shown this shark like already? And these guys like, you probably were like 20 sharks ago.
Right.
You just forgot or whatever. So there was this really interesting thing when I was reading about that whole reality distortion field.
I was gonna say, is it even a real thing? Like
it is a real thing. It is a real. Well, look it up. It's like there's a whole thing dedicated to it. Yeah. If Steve Jobs, the real Steve Jobs, he would get pitched ideas by his team or whatever, and he would be like dismissing them or whatever. And then 1 week later,
would go on do it.
Yeah. Steve Jobs would like pitch the idea and kind of pass it off as his own. Like he feed it back to the creator as if he created it or whatever.
Well, that is narcissistic kind of like tendency as well. It is. It's trying to sell somebody. But the thing is, it wasn't a good idea until it came out of his mouth. Right? That's the whole idea behind that. Right? No. You're thinking about this all the wrong way. You know what? Maybe we should do this. Wait a second. I just said that.
He's just saying it more what the people want to hear.
That's right.
Right.
So another callback that's really cool is so he'll never start a product launch late. He's like, we don't start late ever, right? He was always so adamant about that. Right. And then at the very end of the movie, when he's trying to reconcile with his daughter, he's saying, like they're running late, and she's like, you have to go back on stage or whatever. And he says, I don't care. Like it was finally him like letting go of that. And there's this one, this is sort of maybe me like kind of digging too deep into it, which I like to do, when he says, there's this constant flashback to 5-year-old Lisa, like the first act Lisa, when she is, it shows her and the computer, the painting that she made on the plane or whatever.
Yeah.
And
Jay, that's
the changing point where he gave her the money, started giving the money to go to school.
But you notice how like later in the movie, they keep flashing back to that image. They keep flashing that image, right?
Yeah.
So I always like that image in particular because it shows Lisa and it shows the computer, and these two things are technically the creation of Steve Jobs,
right?
Like they're his inventions, right? Like it's horrible to call
one's his semen invention.
What? It's horrible to call another human being an invention, but that's what
creation.
It's creation.
Yeah.
Great.
And throughout the whole movie, it like I feel like the two thirds of the movie, he is caring solely about the computer,
Right.
and then finally he decides to care about
I think it's because he's like, oh, the children are the future.
the children. No, he finally decides.
Bro.
He finally recognizes what's important, and that's like another sort of
Turning point. For the
Turning point.
character. Yeah.
She just actually showed that she was smart to him. I think they
Right.
finally clicked in that he made something smarter than himself,
Right.
and making him actually see something.
My other big scene that I had put down, though, absolutely, is the scenes with John Scully, Jeff
I was gonna
Daniels'
say
character.
Jeff Daniels.
Oh my god!
Some of them almost made me cry, bro. I mean, the way they had
That-
the dialogue
that-
with
I
each
actually
other.
do tear up when
That
I watch
scene
this
where
movie.
he confronts him and he's like, how come I'm reading that I fired you? He's like, why does everybody think that I fired you? He's like, I'm getting death threats. I'm getting like, and they go back and forth. And then as that's
This is
going
why
on,
he needed security. he
it's
said, right?
intersplicing with
Yeah.
scenes of what actually happened to
Yeah.
him when he had to go to the board of directors and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And he was acting out of line and like he wanted to say. Then at a certain point, he was just like, well, I got to save my job
Yeah.
because I'm about to get thrown out on his ass. And there's a whole idea, they keep talking about how the fact he used to work for Pepsi, and then he left Pepsi for him, and like so, like you could just tell how close those two were and how much they've been through, and like those scenes just riveted. Such good dialogue
Very
exchange between those two. I mean, there's two again, like the Waz scenes. There's about two really big scenes with them as well, where they're just going back and forth. There's some other smaller scenes, but like there's the two big ones where they're going really at each other for like disagreements.
Yeah.
And when it all really kind of comes together, full picture, and you learn about how that all kind of came to be. Great stuff.
Yeah.
Well, that's
Great stuff.
why every relationship in the movie is so important, because it's a different relationship. He looks up to John Scully, like the Jeff Daniels character, and then they have this sort of like betrayal kind of moment, and then the Steve Wozniak is like, we're contemporaries, but I don't respect you, kind of like each relationship is a different relationship. It's very interesting stuff that's going on here.
But to see again, they're all in awe of him though. Every single person, but that's what I mean. Like it's something about there's obviously something about recognizing brilliance, but then also just to have the brilliance allow you into their orbit. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like he wouldn't allow just anybody around him,
that's
like
the thing
in
too,
his life.
with Steve Wozniak,
he doesn't have time for them.
With Steve Wozniak, he thinks he's the brilliant one, or like he thinks he's probably more brilliant, or maybe just as brilliant, or whatever. And that's sort of why they have this kind of bitterness towards each other.
Bro, but he could have just acknowledged him and got this all out of the way.
That's all he had to say.
It's such a small thing.
But that's the thing. But
that's all he wanted.
That's ego, though.
No. But this is the whole thing about how end-to-end control. Like,
yes, he didn't want to acknowledge. He looked at it as a failure of their past. He's like, we're on to the next thing.
But he has to be in control of every aspect of everything, kind of thing.
Insane. I get it. I get it. It's
just that's why his computer is built the way it is.
And I'm gonna. So also there's another one about Lisa, and then I have another one. So Steve kicks Lisa out of the launch in the second act, and then he finally invites her backstage in the third one. Like, you want to come see? Because she was telling him, you have to go to school. You have to go to school. Like, well, you couldn't make her. You're launching a new product. You couldn't make her miss one day of school, or whatever. But I also wanted to talk about the parallels of because you just brought up John Scully, the conversation that Steve and John Scully, Jeff Daniels' character, has about Steve's adoption history, about his like, why were you so.
Unfortunately, I don't feel like you spent a lot of time on this.
No, they did. They did very briefly in each act.
They did
in each act. They did.
There's good quotes too.
In there's like a thread line that it's like this is really what the whole because
then it was lost on me. Then I would say because I gotta go ahead, but
the relationship between Steve and John is that John is like his basically in his mind like his surrogate father. They kind of like his father figure basically. Right. And so they're talking about his actual parents and his whole relationship. Steve was adopted. He was given up for adoption when he was a baby.
Yeah, he says, "Why do kids that were adopted feel like they're rejected instead of selected?"
That's what Scully says to him in the beginning. He says, "Why do people who are adopted think they were rejected instead of selected?" Yeah. And then basically talking about like he was basically talking about his history, and Steve was talking about like the sort of trauma that had on him. It's about having no control. And I thought that was very interesting. It kind of ties into his idea of always having to be in control of everything, because he didn't have it when he was a baby or whatever. When he was a kid, like he didn't have it growing up because his parents gave him up for adoption.
Well, but didn't he say that didn't they basically say that the parents took him back? Or did
So
they
what
re-give
happened
him
was
up?
this. What happened was this. His
Re-
biological parents
Yeah.
gave him up for adoption because his father is a Syrian immigrant,
Mhm.
and I guess his mother's parents didn't approve of like a Muslim marrying or whatever, a Catholic or whatever she was, and so she put her baby up for adoption. Steve Jobs. One couple adopted him, and they
But there
gave
was
him
conditions,
back.
right?
They gave him back a month later because this is not mentioned in the movie, but in real life they wanted a daughter. They didn't want a son. So they gave him
Oh.
back 1 month later.
Didn't they know he had a
Then-
penis?
Huh?
When they seen him?
They didn't know that he would invent the iPhone or
No,
whatever.
no, but they didn't see he had a penis.
didn't
But
have
it
the
wasn't.
port-
It was a boy.
Yeah, I don't know what's the situation
That
was. I don't
weird.
know.
That's weird.
Maybe the whatever the person that takes care of the whole adoption thing just dropped
Oh.
off the baby and they didn't. They were like, we wanted.
Dropped
To,
off the
I don't know what happened.
Like a store.
Delivery
Like a
system.
Yeah.
You know what I meant, but like
Yeah.
he's basically like
Delivery.
the parents that did the first adopted parents that he
Amazon
did get
box.
returned him back.
Oh, okay.
And then 1 month later,
Yeah, I just feel like I thought that was just such, it was dropped in such a way where he's like,
He had to kiss his
it-
mom's feet. Did you
all
see
of
that?
a, all of a sudden,
What the fuck was
all
that
of a
about?
sudden he's
He kissed his mom's feet at that point, and
just
she's.
his mom's feet.
Or maybe I'm mixing up something else.
I'm like, I don't know
What
what
the
you're
fuck
talking
are you
about.
talking about?
You know,
No, that was so weird. Though. He's like, you have met him. He's like, what are you talking about? They're like
Yeah.
out to dinner.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just,
So
that's
so in the
Weird.
first line, not the first line, but that conversation that
Wrong movie.
Scully and Jobs have
you
in,
know their beer. Okay.
oh sure, I'll take it.
Yeah.
The conversation that Scully and Jobs have in Act 2, he says, "What I learned about control is that no newborn baby has control." Like Scully says that line.
Right.
It's
Basically,
true.
like it's like control is an illusion. Basically, nobody's born with it.
Right.
And then
It's developed.
and then so finally in the third act, he says, Steve Jobs says, so Scully was like, it's not like you were given back or whatever. And then Steve says, well, you know, I actually technically was given back by the first couple that adopted me. They didn't want me. And you know, he says that the parents that did adopt him eventually did that end up becoming his parents.
Right.
His mom that raised him refused to love him in his first year that because
She had to give him out.
she had a fear that she would actually have to give Jobs back to like Steve back to her biological mom or whatever,
Right.
his biological mom. And so she's like, oh, she refused to love me for my first year or whatever. And Jeff Daniels is like, you can't refuse to love someone, Steve. And then he says, well, yeah, it turns out you can.
Yeah.
And that's basically what he did to his own daughter.
Yeah.
The entire movie, he was
Yeah.
refusing to love her like the entire movie until he finally.
I don't know if he was refusing to love her. I think he was refusing to acknowledge
It's the same
that he
thing.
loved her in a sense.
It's the same thing.
I
He was
still think it
refusing-
was there,
He was refusing to do anything.
Pushing her away, man.
He was
but he was
refusing-
using this a lot more.
Bro,
than
like
he was
the
using this.
mom points out in the first movie, you're worth millions of dollars, and you don't even care
You
about
give
what condition your
$353 for
child is
fucking-
living in.
Yeah, $350 for child
No,
support. or
at
whatever.
that point I was on her side, but then as the movie went on and she started to get real kooky, yeah, I'm just like,
Yeah,
yeah,
she had the
I mean,
fucking
they're-
sinus infection for 20 years.
yeah.
How does that work without coke?
Yeah.
So and then this is the final one where he says, Steve says that his biological mother that put him up for adoption, she stipulated that whatever couple that adopted him had to be rich,
Right.
college educated, and wealthy. And you know, the jobs that adopted him, they were none of those things. And so then he says later the conversation progresses and John was like, you know, Wozniak's legacy is okay. It's mine's that is in question because I'm the man who fired Steve Jobs, rich, college educated, and
Right.
Catholic.
God, yeah.
And that's kind of like, it's kind of a callback to what he just said, but it's
Right.
also a callback to the fact that he was this imaginary parental figure
Right.
that Steve had
Right.
throughout this point. And
There's
so
a scene with his daughter on the racks up there high. Remember above the stage?
Yes, the rafters there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And they have that talk about that Joni Mitchell song.
Yes.
And they're going back and forth. And she gives him a hug in that one before she leaves.
yeah,
That was the
was
first
a
time
cool-
he got a hug from
Right.
her. Right. I think that changed the way that the movie shifted from there
Right.
on out. It kind of had that stuck in his head after
Right.
when he didn't realize, because they were putting parts of that scene or parts of those little things that she said in a sense
Right.
into the final, like you said, would you say act of the movie?
Yeah.
Whereas it's pivoting to that final
Yeah.
act of the movie and it starts to all play in his head.
Yeah, and it kind of plays out on the roof at the end there.
But
with them,
that roof scene was just so like
Yeah.
deep, bro. I mean,
Oh, it's
when he
great.
told him straight out 30, like he said, no, I'm not starting until I fucking get to read one.
Which
of
is
her
a
things.
very un-Steve Jobs thing. Like that was like that what made him prove to her that like he was serious about this.
He
because
wasn't
like
joking, yeah.
he's not somebody who wants to be late for those things, right?
And,
So
and I ultimately still think I think he did ultimately want the best for his daughter.
Right.
He just didn't know how to come across it without having to be hurtful.
Yeah.
Maybe he didn't want to fall in love in case he had to give her away. Maybe that played a big part of his head. He obviously had issues, bro.
Yeah.
If that's the way we're going down that road, he obviously had issues. Right? I mean,
yeah.
I know there's some kid. I know some kids. I mean, I know kids that in my family go to gifted schools and stuff like that. They're not all personable.
Right.
Doesn't mean they're not.
Right. They don't feel things.
No,
so,
they don't feel things. It still means they feel things, right? It's weird.
The other thing too, actually, is, I forgot to mention is the realization of him with the magazine Time Man of the Year.
Yeah, that was
moment.
a good scene.
That was a very important scene because the whole time he's bitching about how he wasn't on the cover. And then is that during the second or third act when she reveals it?
The third act.
So that's again where he came to another one of these realizations in the third act where he was just like, oh, maybe I don't have it all right, right in my head.
Maybe it's not working.
Because after she reveals that to him, she's like, the reason it was like that is because they didn't choose you. That's why it was a blacked out image. They didn't know who they were going to go with or something like that. That's why it wasn't you. You were never supposed to be on the cover. Like you just, and then he's just sitting there. He's just sitting there for a moment. Like he's like, why did I get that wrong? He's like, why did I think that? Like revisionist history. Like he was so fixated on how it should have been him that he in his mind he actually thought that it was supposed to be him.
That's why a lot of
which
those
is
things,
crazy. Like that's a crazy thing. Like
a lot of those things that people talked about him in certain parts
because he kept blaming
at a certain part, right?
Because he kept blaming somebody else. Remember, he's like, "Oh, it's this guy's fault." I forgot the name of the guy he kept referring to, but he's like, "It's
Dan Cocky."
Yeah, this is the reason why I wasn't on it. And then is what's her name?
Joanna Hoffman.
Yeah, she like just set him straight. She's like, "This is why it was like that. You were never supposed to be the man of the year, or whatever." Like that. He's like, "What the hell?" Like he just
she was really the brains if you think about it, because she pulled him off the seat.
Of course, but like just
that
quiet moment of him sitting there and coming to that realization and just being like, why did I think that? Like, and he's like, if I'm wrong about that, maybe I'm wrong about all these other things, right? Like then he started doubting himself.
You knew she loved him too.
Of course.
But they were like a platonic, like,
But near the end, I think that you can.
She said she loved him. She says, "I love you, Steve." But it's one of those things where he's like,
"Won the contest for putting up with him. You should be winning the contest for putting up with me."
Oh, I already have, but
that was a great.
Like, but it's one of those things where it's just like sometimes you make it hard because you're a tough person to love.
Yeah,
some people are like that. They make it difficult. Yeah. But if you feel like it's worthwhile because you have to put the work in as a friend, because if you actually think that person's a good person, you'll go the extra distance, right? That's the whole thing, right? Like like in a relationship too. Like that's what friendships are. Yeah. They are like relationships, right? So, anyways, I guess go into quotes. Yeah.
So my absolute favorite quote of this movie, I have a bunch written down, but my number one. Musicians play their instruments. I play the orchestra.
That's right.
I love that line.
I think everybody was going to say that.
I love that line.
Yeah. It is so true because he's literally the guy on stage. He's playing the orchestra, which is the people.
You know what?
He's the conductor. That's what he's saying. Like he's pulling the puppet strings.
To me, this confirms me to like what when people have that. I know like comedians. I don't know if you guys heard that Bill Burr joke about like Steve Jobs didn't do shit. That's sort of like what I
love that bit.
He's kind of the one that kind of like pushed a bit of that narrative, maybe, or helped push it.
Yeah, he did it on talk shows.
Yeah, on talk shows that Steve Jobs just went up. And I feel like that's sort of like it's a joke. I get it's a joke and stuff, but I feel like that's sort of diminishing what Steve actually does, which is he's a director, he's a manager, he's the one that he doesn't actually do the physical work, but he's the one like steering the ship, basically. You know, kind of like how a filmmaker won't like actually like get a sewing machine and make the costumes or whatever, but they'll tell the costume designer, I want the sewing machine to be this long, and I'll tell the costume designer I want the costume to be this color and this long or whatever, or I tell the composer of the film I want the soundtrack to sound like this, and then the composer goes and makes the soundtrack or whatever, right? It's like he's not actually doing the work, but he's in control of everything.
Like I said, it's a needed position.
Of course,
it's like unfortunately though, when it boils down to it, they should not get credit for also creating the thing.
Think about how many people it takes to make a movie. Like when you watch the credits, it's hundreds of people. Key grip,
hundreds of people don't get that recognition.
Who gets the credit?
Though.
The director, directed by, and then everyone credits all the genius to that one person.
That's why sometimes people cite the best directors or people like that do this kind of stuff are the ones that are involved in every process of the film. Like there's some directors that will not be in the editing room at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Like that's an actual, like they were, or they will, but they'll be like not really
they won't
involved.
edit it, but
they'll allow their editor who they trust because they've worked with them before to do the editing.
This is what I remember someone said this,
but there's certain people that want to have their fingerprints all over everything.
It's like the director is someone who does everything and then absolutely nothing at the same time. They don't actually like do any of this stuff, but they're controlling every aspect of the acting, the music, everything, the cinematography.
Right.
They have their hand in all of it, but they're not actually doing the work.
It's their vision that they're bringing to life. They have to oversee everything and approve of everything that's being done.
I also love the line that Seth Rogen says immediately after that, where he says, "That sounds like something that sounds great but doesn't actually mean anything." When he says musicians play their instruments and I play the orchestra. That's just like a great all-time quote for me. Like that's just genius.
What do I got here? Hold on. Okay, here we go. This is a good one. This is a John Scully quote here.
Nice.
Where he yells, "I gave you your day in court. You knew your cards and I showed you mine. I showed you mine." Like that delivery where he's basically saying that, like, you know, how he did him dirty, kind of like where he kind of revealed himself to him, like what his plans were. And Steve kind of went off the reservation, so to speak, where he's just like, and he kind of left him there, you know, holding the bag, where he had to go to the directors and be like, well, we're gonna fire you then if you don't, get this guy in line, right? So
that was a good scene.
Good scene. I like
that whole boardroom scene.
Oh, and then to circle back to what we said earlier, during that conversation, or I think it was to him, he says, he's like, "Don't send Wozniak out in the press. Don't touch Rain Man." Always.
I hate that he calls him Rain Man.
Yeah,
I hate that he calls him that.
I get why he called him that, though.
It's kind of an insult.
It is, but I get it. Why?
Well, no, it's not really an insult. He's still a genius.
Yeah.
Right. Well, the Rain Man is too. Yeah,
that's what exactly. I mean, right?
Yeah,
like it's all the way you look at it, right?
But he says, "Don't touch Rain Man. I'll always protect him because that's what men do." Yeah, that's where the callback is. Yeah, that's great. How about you, Jay?
Yeah. I got a. Where do I have it? I was just seeing it. Oh, and when he's, you know, how he's in that scene where he's telling her, it was $1,500 to fucking bless your house, right? And then after she says that the wife says, you know, that things don't become so because you say so.
Right.
I like that line too.
Bro. That was a good one. Good one.
And then Jobs says apparently about his thing about his daughter too. He goes, she was tested and apparently she can fly.
Right? Yeah, I like that line too. You know, like, this whole script is just filled with jokes.
Yeah.
So that the one when they're in the boardroom, like they're about to vote if they should fire Steve or fire John or whatever. And he says, "I sat in a garage with Wozniak and invented the future because artists lead and hacks ask for show of hands." That's why it's like, you know, like because he sees himself as an artist.
Yeah. Well, apparently he was difficult with the company too. You know? Like, throughout his career.
Whoever said the customer was right was right. I promise you a customer.
Yeah.
That's what he says, and that's like a good point too. It's like people don't know what they want until you give it to them.
He uses that. They don't know what they want until you show them. That's what Steve Jobs says. Nobody knows what they want. It's a marketing fucking thing, bro. It's a tool. There's a reason marketing exists.
Mm-hmm.
Is because people don't know what they want. You can put a piece of shit there and make it look
right. Sell me this pen.
Like
colorful.
But, I mean, just a dump of shit, bro. And you can make it look colorful and whatever with lights and stuff. And make put a little drop on it. Doesn't smell, and everybody loves it now all of a sudden. You know, because there's that that poop.
Well, I knew for a while there you were obsessed with that kind of way of thinking of that kind of stuff.
But it's an intuitive and ingenious way of thinking. Because if you don't look at people thinking like that,
right,
how are you going to realize what everybody's got going on in their head? makes
Right.
you a good judge of character, makes you maybe blind, to certain things, but it does also make you smart in a sense of like a character.
Yep.
Basing your life around that, marketing people.
Right.
I can see what you like. I can see what you like.
Right.
This whole fucking way of we going through the future is
It's
the
another
same
way
full
of
shit.
thinking. Yeah, for
You know,
sure.
they know they all want us to be up on their fucking cloud so they can know everything about us. You know, right?
Yeah.
Because that's the easiest way to market, right?
I got Steve saying, "Why haven't we ever slept together?
Yeah, 'cause we're not in love.
'Cause we're not in love." Yeah. Then where he says 5 minutes before every launch, and everybody goes and gets drunk at the bar and tells me what they really think
yeah.
about it.
So I have. Oh, sorry, Jay. I skipped
Oz has another a good one too. Computers aren't supposed to have human flaws. I'm not building them with yours,
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
right?
That's
Because I don't even think at that point he even realized that he had flaws at that point.
So I have another one from that same scene when they're in the garage or whatever. He says, "Computers aren't paintings," and he says, "Fuck you, yes they are." He just looks at things
Well, is
differently.
he talking about the black box at that time?
No, he's talking
or-
about when they're making the Apple II, and he's like,
okay.
I want 8
Dynamic,
slots," and
Yeah,
Steve is like, "No, only 2." And he says, "Oh, you know, when Steve, you know, Bob Dylan doesn't stop the song to ask people what like verse they want to hear or whatever."
Right.
And the guy says, you know, computers aren't paintings, and he says, "Fuck you, yes they are." I like the one when they're trying to test the voice demo, and it's not working, and so he says to Andy Hertzfeld, he says, "Fix it," and Andy says, "I can't." And so Steve says, "Who's the person who can?" And Andy's like, "I'm the person who can, and I can't."
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's such an Aaron Sorkin.
Yeah.
Like he always has that kind of
That's right.
rhythm in his dialogue.
Yeah.
And then there's a scene when they're in the backstage with him and his ex-wife. I don't know if they were ever married or whatever, so I say ex-wife, but where she pulls out a copy of Time magazine because she's saying that, you know, you said some
Trashing me
insult,
in
you're
that,
trashing me.
yeah.
And then as she pulls out the magazine from her purse, like Steve can kind of sense that she's pulling it out. And he says, "First of all, can I tell you something about Time magazine? I believe it's a training facility for paid assassins."
That's good.
I love
That's
that.
good. That's good.
Yeah.
That's good.
You got one, Jay or Nico?
He's got one in the beginning.
I'm good. That's all
He's
I
got
have.
one in the beginning
Yeah,
where it
that's all I
says, he says, I can't remember who he said it to, but he said coach lands in the runway at the same time as first class.
Yeah.
Which is true,
That's
bro.
right.
And then,
think about it.
And then Joanna's like, "I don't even know what
That's
the
a
fuck that means."
smart
Like,
quote, bro. That's
Yeah.
a smart. You're paying extra for what?
yeah.
Well, the
This-
treatment on the plane.
Yeah.
Bullshit. Like you know, at the end of the day, if you need something from the plane, yeah,
Right.
you're basically getting more leg room.
Yeah.
That's all you're getting.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
And maybe a reclining chair that
Yeah.
you don't have to sit.
That's what you're
next to
paying for.
Sweaty Max or whatever. Sweaty JT.
That's no, bro.
Right?
Why you gonna
No.
put that out there?
Sweaty. I said sweaty because
So
it gets hot in here, right?
so,
I took my shirt off already.
when they're trying to fix the thing, he says, "We're not a pit crew at Daytona. This can't be fixed in seconds." And he says, "You didn't have seconds. You had 3 weeks. The universe was
Yeah.
created in a third of that time." And then he
bro.
says, "Well, someday you'll have to tell
That's
us how
great.
you did it."
That's great. That's
He
great.
has a god complex. That's why
Yeah.
he threw it right in his face.
Yeah, he did. He's like, "Yeah, well,
Fuck
Yeah.
you,
since you
he's
think
basically
since you think you're
Yeah,
a god, you got to
yeah,
tell us how you did it."
Exactly. That was a good one. That was a good one. I know.
And then the same characters, same conversation, the same characters, but like in a later act of the movie. He says, "Why do you want people to dislike you?" He says, "I don't want people to dislike me. I'm indifferent to whether they dislike me." And then he says, he reveals to himself, "Well, if you don't care about it, then for the record, I always disliked you."
Yeah, that's
You know?
right.
And then he says, and then Steve Jobs looks at him and he says, "Oh, that's too bad because I've always liked you." And that line always messes me up because it's like you had a very interesting way of showing him because you weren't
Right.
like whipping him
You're
the
a
whole
dick.
movie.
Yeah.
Here's another one that I wrote down too, and this one stuck in my head, and I've been thinking about it for a long time, like since I wrote it down. But he said, I forget who said the fucking thing. I didn't write it down, but he said God sent his only. Oh, that's what Steve Jobs said. God sent his only son on a suicide mission, but we still love him because he gave us trees.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I remember.
You know what that
Yeah.
you know what that means because he was being such a dick to his daughter,
yeah.
and that was being published in
Yeah.
a magazine, and he
Yeah.
says it doesn't really
Yeah.
matter at the end of the day
Yeah.
because we're gonna sell
We're
a
gonna-
million Apple computers. People are not gonna care about that,
Right.
basically. Like,
Yeah.
So
That was a deep cut. Like that was a nice.
that was a very good line. I have a couple more. Do you have a couple more? Do you want to say another one? Or?
Go ahead.
I say when this is a Wozniak line. He said, "It's not binary. You can be decent and gifted at the same time."
Yeah.
When they have that whole argument, basically, like like you're just being an asshole just to be an asshole. Like there's no real reason for it.
No.
And then John Scully says this one in the previous in 1988 when they're doing the black box reveal. He says to John Scully says to Steve, he says, "Don't play stupid. You can't pull it off," which I really like that line.
Yeah, Jeff Daniels does good Sorkin delivery.
Absolutely. Actually, I have another one where he says, "You can't." Well, I already mentioned this one, but I guess I'll repeat. He says, "You can't refuse to love someone, Steve." And then Steve says, "Yeah, it turns out you can."
Yeah.
And then the last one I'll say is when he confronts his daughter at the end of the movie, he says, she says, "Why didn't you ask? Why didn't you say that? Why did you deny that you were my dad? Why didn't you say that? Whatever." And he says, "I'm poorly made." And it's that line
design flaw in himself.
Yeah,
bro.
that's not for someone who is such a
What a
visionary
cop-out,
or whatever.
though.
And stuff.
Yeah.
That's what I'm rolling my eyes at. Not that it was
that one got me. I like cheesy lines like that.
No,
but
not
it is
the
a
line.
cop-out.
Not the line. The line's good. But to say that, like, it's just to
Like,
your
to
daughter.
that's
yeah,
actually
I'm
in
sorry.
Harvard. That's smart.
I'm sorry. I'm a shitty person. That's basically what he's saying. Like,
Well,
I'm
he can't even
shitty.
say I'm
Well,
sorry.
the-
He just said I was designed wrong.
Before that scene happens, the one that happens is the one between him and Jeff Daniels, where he talks about his whole adoption history and his relationship with his parents or whatever. And he just says, like, listen, like, I have my own sort of trauma, and I'm kind of just, like, I'm not the most well put together person because of it.
As an actual human being, he fails, and as a father, he fails. That's what I mean. But there's other aspects of his life he's able to do because he knows how to sell what he's envisioning in his mind. He needs to get it out there. He cannot do anything.
It's like one side of his brain's working,
Right.
and then the other side is on pause,
that's
but still absorbing.
the creative part of the brain.
Yeah.
That's where they say
And
that
then
there's one side that is and one side
But
that
eventually, you come to that realization. If you're not on in a spectrum of any sort, you do come to that realization that there is that, whether you can express it or not.
Right. Because he's not in touch with his feelings. Clearly, like
but
it's
they
you know
did,
what I mean?
but they did get to him because they were depicting in the.
But that's what the third act is. The third act is largely
Showing little
him
scenes,
coming to these
especially that hug.
realizations finally after we've seen like him through the first two, because at that point he was struggling. By the time you get to the third act, he's been brought back. He's succeeding. They're going to allow him
How
to do
many
it.
times
Like,
has he failed?
This is where
that
he's
point?
finally got what he's been working towards. And now that they're giving it to him, he's kind of coming to all these self-realizations about himself.
Yeah.
It's like everything that I've been putting on the back burner.
Right. And all
coming
the
at me
people from his past that he's beefed with have come now back again.
But still stood by his side.
But that's why he has to have these conversations with them in the third act.
Yeah.
It actually, I like how you brought it up with the 3 acts. I didn't look at it that way, but it actually works out very beautifully, this movie, in that sense.
Well, it actually, with the time.
Yes, it actually works out very nicely, to the point where I'll take back my comment where I said I don't care for this other fucking narrative of this plot.
The daughter?
Yeah, because I think it actually worked well. It gave us just enough without having to give us the other inventions
And how
that he created
each act
or help create.
How these relationships evolve through each act.
No,
It's different.
it gave us
Like
just
each
enough.
character.
I just didn't look at it like that, this movie, because in my mind, I guess I was thinking maybe of the other film and other biopics for that reason, because they actually focus on everything.
Yeah.
It's all encompassing. This was not. So I kind of felt like we got cheated out of some other moments when I first watched it, when I watched this again. Right?
So I don't know if I mentioned, like, I really did also enjoy Kate Winslet's performance. Like,
we didn't talk about her enough at all.
She was really good.
I didn't even know it was her, bro.
I didn't look like her.
I really loved her in this movie. And
she's always good.
She's always good. She's amazing. And so
She's hot.
Yeah, especially with the glasses, the
Well,
librarian.
Just that, and the way she was able to manage that type of
and
person.
the slight Polish accent. One of my favorite monologues in the movie is the one she delivers when she's telling him, like, you actually kind of referenced it earlier when she says, I love you. You know how much I love that.
Put it with your bullshit.
What she says, I love that you don't care how much money a person makes. You care what they make.
Yeah.
But what you make isn't supposed to be the best part of you.
No.
The best part of you is when you're a father. And then she says, and it's caused me so much agony that for you, Steve, it's the worst. Like, basically saying that if you're a bad father, you're basically a bad human being. Basically.
Yeah, and it's like, she's like, how can I love you like that? Like, she's thinking, she's arguing with herself. Like, she won the competition every fucking year for like 3 years. Whoever can deal with him.
Really
is really what the job was.
Want to hear my hot take?
Go ahead.
the Oscar that DiCaprio has for The Revenant belongs to Michael Fassbender for this.
This is the year that he won.
Yeah, this is so much better than what DiCaprio did in The Revenant. I love DiCaprio, but
yeah,
it's not. You can't. This is such a good
I think
performance.
this was really good.
And this thing is, I think the only Oscar noms this movie got. We could talk a little bit about the Oscars if you guys want. Michael Fassbender in lead actor and Kate Winslet as either best supporting actress or I think best supporting actress. Just those two. And I think a large part of it has to do with the fact that this movie was not a box office success. A lot of it it matters, like when it comes to award season, like they want to know like how big of an impact it's made and stuff. And because this movie didn't have like box office success like that, I feel like that played a huge part in it. Like I don't even know how Aaron Sorkin doesn't get nominated for best adapted screenplay when this is, or even win it. Is it just because he had just won it like a couple of years before that? I don't know. But like,
I agree that The Revenant is not like, I don't know. Here's the thing. Leo was overdue. That was one of those Oscars where they're like, we screwed up and you deserve an Oscar for the past things that you've done, and it just never worked out. So we're going to give it to you for this film. And that film's not even that great of a film. And that's the problem.
I like The Revenant, but
it's fine. But did he deserve the Oscar for it? No, he's done better.
Other movies.
They do this sometimes, the Oscars. They give an Oscar to somebody because they missed the boat on, and sometimes it's like a Lifetime Achievement Award Oscar,
basically,
where it's just like, this guy's gonna die soon. We better give this guy a friggin' Oscar because,
but
like,
I think Jack Nicholson.
You know what? What? I understand that whole mentality, but that mentality is bad because it just creates more lifetime Oscars of people you've snubbed, and that.
Then get it right. Like, it's one of those things. Like, in the moment, this is why, you know what, they should have a revisionist Oscars. That's my hot take.
Yeah.
That's they should revisit like older Oscar years and reassign all the Oscars. Can you imagine the chaos that would create? But like, listen, because sometimes culturally, movies stand the test of time. If you look back at some of these people that won these Oscars, they're movies that no one even talks about anymore. Like, yes, maybe in that year that was a great performance, but it's not culturally an important movie on any level. So why are we acknowledge it? Why should that be known in time as that? Hey, guess who won the Oscar this year for best picture? This movie no one watches anymore. So it's crazy. Right? Am I wrong?
No, you're right. But I totally agree that was like a sort of a, what is it called? Like a
revisionist,
not a revisionist, but like a lifetime Oscar for Leo, or
where
whatever.
they're like, we missed the boat on you
missed
earlier,
the boat and you're long overdue, whatever.
Yeah.
But if you're just judging just on performance of the, I kind of forget the other performances. I think.
Let me look up the category for you.
I think Bryan Cranston for.
So you're talking about for best picture
of 2015
or
best actor.
Okay.
So I think Bryan Cranston for Trumbo, which I didn't see. So I mean that kind of pulls a hole in my argument. But and then I think Matt Damon was nominated for The Martian or whatever. Which,
people like that movie. Though.
Yeah, but that was not a outstanding performance. That was just him talking into a webcam for the whole movie.
Is it 2015 or 2016? Probably.
Like the ceremony took place in 2016, but it was the celebrating the films of 2015.
Okay, so there we go.
By the way, I don't know if that Oscars, just to bring it to a larger context, that was the Oscars So White Oscars.
Yeah. Well,
do you remember that?
Yeah.
Where no black actors got.
Years.
So that was that year. Yeah. That year when Chris Rock hosted the Oscars.
So, okay. So this is, you know what, though? Like, honestly, I think you're right. You're right.
Not a strong category. Not a strong year.
It's a very strong. It's a very not strong category.
Not a very strong. But of the performances, Michael Fassbender was easily the best.
I could go for it.
Easily
so
the best.
Leonardo DiCaprio, The Revenant, Matt Damon, The Martian, as you mentioned, which is also good. Bryan Cranston, Trumbo. I never watched that either. Michael Fassbender, Steve Jobs, fucking Eddie Redmayne in The Danish Girl.
Oh God,
seriously, which hasn't aged well at all. Like,
I've never even seen the movie.
I'm just saying, just because if you know what the movie's about, I'm sure it hasn't aged well by today's PC culture. Because he plays like.
I thought that would be a good thing.
No, because now they would want to cast somebody who is actually a trans actor.
Jesus, yeah,
I'm just saying that's how they think now.
And Eddie Redmayne won,
right? Am I right? That's what they would think. You're like, oh, we can't have this cis male fucking play a trans character.
What the fuck do they call it? I don't get it.
Yeah,
don't even get me started with
I think Eddie Redmayne won
nouns
the year
and
before.
verbs and fucking.
he won the year before for playing Stephen Hawking.
That's
Theory
right.
Of Everything.
That's
or whatever.
right. That's right.
And yeah, so I seen that movie. That's like the traditional biopic or whatever.
I'm with you. Steve Jobs should have won this.
He should have won.
I
Michael
think-
Fassbender should have won an Oscar for this. I'm not even. And honestly,
he
like
played a great role, bro.
I think Aaron Sorkin should have gotten another Oscar. Can you find who won Best Adapted Screenplay?
Sure.
You know, it's
for
funny.
that
And
year?
Jeff Daniels has always been a good supporting actor. He never really.
This
gets
is also the
full
year.
actor
This is also the year
award, eh?
Spotlight won
Yeah.
Best Picture. By the way,
Spotlight.
Yeah.
Fantastic film.
over
Should've won.
over Mad Max Fury Road.
Oh no.
Which one was Spotlight? But which one are you?
That's
So
the
talking
it's
one
the one
where
about
they-
Boston where they the
The-
Boston Inquirer. They
Yeah.
talk about all the priests that are raping kids,
Oh,
essentially
about?
Great
molesting
film.
them. Yeah,
Okay.
great film, riveting.
Very rewatchable.
I love it. It's a great film.
Nothing.
I'm not laughing. I don't know
It's
why.
a
An
great
afternoon, a better afternoon cannot be spent.
I'm being
watching
serious. I
Spotlight,
think it's a
you know?
great movie.
No,
he
I know,
hates
I
it.
know.
He hates
I-
it.
I've only seen it once. I just
I'll have to
it's
check it
not-
out,
it's not
man.
mine.
They do, and they let it.
When you talk about Oscar bait, those are the type of movies that come to mind. Like,
Oscar bait.
yeah,
It's a good movie,
Yeah.
though. I don't
I think
care.
that
what
was
you say.
priest
Yeah,
bait.
fair
If you
enough,
don't think
man.
about
Your boy's in that movie. You know who's in that?
Mark Ruffalo.
Michael Keaton. Mark
Oh, yeah,
Ruffalo was
yeah.
excellent in that movie. He get back.
it. Apparently, I got so many boys.
No,
Yeah.
I like Mark Ruffalo in that movie.
All right, here we go. Screenplay for Straight Outta Compton.
Best adapted.
Oh,
Because it's an
adapted.
adaptation
Sorry,
of
I
Walt-
put screenplay. Sorry.
Yeah, that's original.
Yeah. Spotlight was in that one too. Okay, here we go. The Martian, The Big Short. That was pretty good.
That was a good one.
Yeah. Carol, Room, and Brooklyn. This isn't even
Which
in the
which
running.
one won? The Brook Short, right?
Big
Bro-
Short, I think, won for this one. Hold on, let me see. Winner. Let me see. I think it's Big Short, if I'm not mistaken.
Winner, chicken dinner.
Yeah.
Some
Big
weird
Short?
movie.
Makes sense. That
Honestly,
makes sense.
that was a good win,
That was
but I
really
would
good.
still take this over that
I don't know.
personally. Aaron Sorkin, yeah, bro.
Big Short's pretty good.
Aaron no, it's good. I like that screenplay, but this, bro, like Aaron Sorkin's script, bro, he's the best writer in Hollywood for my money's worth. I just all the parallels, all the layers of all these relationships, how these relationships show a different side of Steve Jobs' personality. I think, and not the fact that, like I said earlier, this whole dramatization is a total fabrication. These scenes did not happen the way they happened, but
Right.
he creates this sort of thing before every product launch to kind of give this sense of just the idea of having it before a product launch. I just
Right.
think this is all just. I would have given it to this personally if I was in charge, but I'm not mad at The Big Short winning for that. By the way, can I just say
As
one?
the episode goes on, he gets like further and further. In the
Yeah,
back.
I'm like leaning. By the way, can I just say?
Chair.
Can I just say something that has nothing to do with anything? But because I just mentioned,
do it all the time. Go ahead.
because I just mentioned the whole Oscars so white thing. Like they were mad that no black actors were getting nominated.
Yeah,
for
and then it became, and then there was a whole year where it was all black actors
Yeah,
that
yeah.
were nominated.
But
right?
that's not what I wanted to
Snoop Dogg
talk
got
about. So
nominated.
that year was because you just mentioned Straight Outta Compton.
Yeah.
All the nominations that Straight Outta Compton only got one out of nomination of all the actors, the black talent that was involved with that film, and the only nomination was for screenplay, which was written by two white guys.
Right.
I just find that funny that like two white dudes wrote
Yeah.
Straight Outta Compton.
They've certainly
That's
come
just-
along. They've certainly come a long way now, though. You see
You
all
would hope
kinds,
so, yeah.
all kinds at the.
Now they get punched out if they say the wrong
That's
thing
right.
to each other. I think it's
I don't know. I just find
bitch-faced.
no. I find that funny that two white dudes wrote that Straight Outta Compton.
That is
like,
funny.
That to me just blows my. And that's
Yeah.
the only recognition they gave for Straight Outta Compton.
Oh, there you have it. Great movie, by the way.
No, it is a good one. It is a good one. That one is also like a Wikipedia page, kind of like
Yeah.
Wikipedia page type biopic and stuff.
Do you have anything? Because I guess this is coming on the 10-year anniversary in terms of legacy for this film. though?
Legacy, I don't think it has much, to be
Right.
honest.
It lifts the fucking iPhones and fucking
But
everything in
that's
your
the legacy
palm
of
of
the
your
real
hand.
Steve Jobs. I'm talking about the movie.
Okay, well,
The
I mean,
actual
if they're doing a
film.
biopic, I mean, it is kind of a same
And
sort of
I think
legacy.
when it comes to like why it didn't perform well, I feel like a big reason was because one had already come out with Ashton Kutcher
Oh,
like 2 years before that, and I feel like that
more
might have
probably of a stoner one.
taken the juice out. No, it's just like I was reading the whole research there because they do all this like analytics after a movie comes out, like, okay, why did it perform well? Why didn't? And they like I guess speculated that the public was kind of tired of Steve Jobs at that point, even
Yeah.
though he was only dead for 4 years at that point. But
yeah,
they-
I think like whenever a film comes out that's basically almost a different take or on the same subject matter though within the same time
It gets
frame.
redundant, yeah.
It's just like, and then people always reference it as which one, this one or that one, and then
Yeah,
some
yeah.
people will watch one, some people watch the other. It becomes very confusing. Even for us, when we were talking about doing this movie, you had to clarify more than once
what's
which
funny?
movie you were talking
Absolutely.
about.
I made
Right?
that joke, but I didn't even know there was another movie.
Yeah.
Honestly, I was watching this. This is the one I had seen.
Ashton Kutcher is in it.
Yeah, that's why I said more like a stoner role.
And it's no, like, I think critically it's way critically it was like shit on compared to this movie. That one.
No, this movie got good reviews. It just
No, I'm
didn't
just saying
make
compare
money.
that one is not
Yeah.
looked at good.
Yeah, yeah.
I think. I
haven't seen it, but I honestly have no interest.
It's been
in
a
seeing
while since I've seen it, but to be fair, at the time I didn't think it was that bad when I watched it.
I have no interest in seeing it, especially when a movie like this exists. Like to me, Michael Fassbender is my Steve Jobs. Like for me personally. And then The Legacy. I mean, listen. Like this is a movie that when it came out, I kind of didn't think twice of it after I saw it. Like maybe, you know, it was a good movie. I had a good time when I saw it. But then as years have gone on and I've revisited it, it's made me realize like, wow, this is a very well written, well structured drama. And to me, that's The Legacy, that it's just a very, very, from top to bottom for me, a very well made film.
Legacy,
penned by one of the greatest writers of our time.
That's
so,
what I would say.
yeah.
Highlighted by I think this is like part of a great Aaron Sorkin run in terms of like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean, like his screenplay and writing.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. So that's all I would say, because I don't think this should be legacy to Steve Jobs, because Steve Jobs' legacy is
It's Steve Jobs.
Yeah,
Legacy-
exactly.
he has no
legacy is,
I will say,
think, letting people know that where am I going with this now, guys? Because this is what happens. I forget where that thought goes, but
this happens to me all the time.
the legacy I think it leaves behind is that even people with problems and issues and stuff can still accomplish what they need to do. All right, it's
even if you're an asshole, you could succeed
if it's written the right way.
I will say this.
There you go.
I will say this. I like preceding me watching Steve Jobs, I wasn't like, oh, I'm so attached to Steve Jobs as like, it's not like someone I revered, even though I said earlier that like my dad really liked Apple products and stuff like that. But after watching this movie numerous times, it does spark an interest in me to want to like read more about like the real Steve Jobs and actually pick up that biography and read about him. And I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. Okay. Well put. Yeah. I don't think there's anything else out of that. I don't think there's anything else. Yeah.
No, I had a good time watching
movies.
Like you said, worth the conversation though. I think that was a really good conversation here today. Yeah. Like I actually.
Do you agree?
Yeah. I think
nice.
I'm always surprised at how much juice we can squeeze out of a conversation for some of these films though. Cause I'll tell you, sometimes it takes me to come on the show and actually talk about my thoughts on a film to actually have anything really that much to say on it. Because sometimes when I watch a movie, I'm like, yeah, that was good, but I won't have any. There's very few films that I walk away having a lot to think about, and that's when I know that's a really good movie.
So did this do that for you, or
not necessarily?
Not necessarily.
But when we come here and we get to discuss it, which is why I like to do this show, there is a lot of things that we.
So I would go and say that would go and say to it would coincide with saying that by looking at it as a critic now,
right,
and rewatching something,
right,
it gives you a whole different perspective
on
it, and makes you think. And even to watch a new movie,
right,
you know, I found that it's hard, like even now, to watch it without having that critiquingness into it, even though you know I might not have fucking really much to say, but to still see how the storyline can play out,
right?
And you know, watching it more than once really does that for you. And sometimes it's hard because when you watch a new movie, you don't want to critique it like that,
right? You
want to just enjoy it at the first moment,
yeah.
But then you tend to come.
Yeah, you don't want to overthink it because you're just trying to enjoy yourself by watching it. Yeah. But then you got to come from at a different direction, like when you sit here and talk about it,
of course.
And you have to unpack a lot of your thoughts on the film, right?
Well, I had the sort of advantage in that because this is a movie I've revisited numerous. Right. It's not just one movie I saw many years ago, and that was that. And like, this is a movie that I had revisited before years ago, and then. Yeah. I revisited actually recently, and that's why I brought it up to the discussion. Like,
we're still formulating our thoughts on this film because we've only seen it a couple of times. Right? We're still actually trying to come up with stuff to talk about when it comes to this, right?
So I have a question, Jay, because the last time I said, I said let's do Steve Jobs. He's like, who gives a f about Steve Jobs? So I want final verdict. Good
I mean,
movie, bad movie. What's up?
I understand his vision now.
Do you
I
understand?
understand it, but I still don't like the product.
You don't like the movie?
No, I like the movie. Yeah,
Oh, you don't like his
I
products,
don't like his
Apple
product.
products.
I get what he's going for, and I get where his
Good.
genius is, and that stuff, and where he is as a person and his narcissism, because I can relate to a lot of those little fucking
Yeah.
things that he has. But I still, you know, it's not going to change the fact that I want to be able to fucking be like the Seth Rogen of it and be able to fuck with stuff and play around with stuff and add different things on it, as opposed to being controlled by one central system that you have to have special tools to get into. So but as a movie itself and as a person itself, I understand. And if this is if they did a good enough job as hopefully this was, like as I said, I don't know that much about Steve Jobs as a person besides that he created this Apple phone and fucking, or you know, the whole thought process behind it. Yeah, I think it did a great job that way. I did, but like I said, it's still not going to change my fact that
He's not gonna go run out and buy an
I'm not
iPhone.
going to.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go fucking.
Actually, the
chasing
next
crazy.
phone I get, I want an iPhone just because of this.
Fuck that. Fuck
Yeah,
that.
but you
I'm
know,
still looking at it.
I will say this though. I feel like this type of movie, what I do also like about it is I feel like it gets the sort of like creative aspects of my mind going a little bit because of just how he saw the world.
Right.
Yeah.
And like how it's like things you would never think of that are so obvious. You're like, oh wow, like when he's talking about how a perfect cube isn't a perfect cube to the human eye, so you kind of have to adjust. Just like different ways of looking at the world. It's like wow, like this whole design aspect of it is
because you have
intriguing.
to see the future. It's like when they were designing cars in that sense. In the 80s, the cars were square.
Yeah.
Okay. Then they decided to start rounding the corners,
Yeah.
the edges off it. And now look what they fucking look like.
Yeah.
And that probably is like an engineering advantage
It-
to like wind resistance or whatever, like
Big
the curve
time.
of it and
So-
stuff. Like
sorry.
it's all designed intentionally. you know?
And so you have an engineer and a designer that have to fucking come up with the same
Yeah.
product. It's hard, but it works. It's like a director and a screenwriter.
Right.
They got to work together,
Right.
but they see two different things.
Right.
Can I just, because I know we're supposed to wrap this one up a
That
bit,
makes
but
sense, right?
I know the whole thing about
Yeah.
when we were talking about how he's like taking credit for other people's ideas and stuff. I was just so funny because he sees another programmer pull out the disc from his breast pocket, and so then he gets the idea. Oh, I should do that on stage when I thought that was sort of like an
Yeah.
interesting thing of like he's kind of
Stealing the
taking
guy's
a
fucking-
credit
Yeah.
like for something he
You gotta
saw.
steal
there.
from the best,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that's how they do it.
So I don't want to call Steve Jobs. I think in my personal verdict, Steve was a genius. He was a visionary.
Yeah,
Of course.
Same. I already said
Absolutely.
it earlier today. I already said it.
And a genius in multiple ways, like a design, visionary, business-minded genius.
Yeah.
But I maintain I think his greatest talent was his ability of speech, his on a stage and
Agreed.
stuff.
Yep. Yeah. I
As a
agree.
presenter, he
Agreed.
was top notch.
That being said, did you have any movies to pair it with? for
Oh
this
boy,
one?
do I!
Yeah, go
I
for it.
I got a lot
hit,
of.
hit us with those.
I
Yeah.
got
Do you
one.
have?
Yeah, mine was very simple. I only had a couple written down for this.
I have 8.
I got one.
Go ahead.
You don't want to believe it. I still think this is a good comparison in the
Oh, I know
thing
which one you're gonna say.
to Megalopolis, because
Because about the
regardless-
creative side of things. Yeah,
and
creating.
the way,
Yeah.
and if the amount of time
I like it. Actually, that's a good one.
That is
Yeah,
a good
yeah,
one.
yeah,
I didn't think
yeah,
of it, but
yeah,
I thought that's a good
yeah,
one.
I watched them, like I was watching them hand in hand in
Yeah,
a sense,
yeah,
right? And it was really
Trying to improve our world, right? Yeah, I like it. I like it.
using a different part
Yeah,
of
I
your
see
fucking
it.
brain.
I see it. I see it. I just put Social Network down
Yeah,
because
I did too.
obviously the
That's the
obvious,
first one. I wrote.
obviously, and then I actually just put just to compare the other Steve Jobs movie, Jobs,
Yeah, that's a
right?
good
Just
one,
to
too.
be able to sit there and be like, I'm gonna watch 2 movies about Steve Jobs
even-
and then
yeah, I didn't think
compare and
about that.
contrast on them, right?
Okay,
So
I
those
have-
are the only 2 I had.
I have a lot, so let me just run. So number 1 is the Social Network. I feel like this is a good companion piece to the Social Network. It's almost the same story, kind of like this tech visionary who is a very antisocial person, is very kind of disconnected to people in that sense. But what I found really interesting about the Social Network was like how this is like a kid, basically like a teenager, coming to the realization at the end of the movie that he's been like basically a jerk to everyone.
Also, that one had a lot to do with like people like not getting their piece of the pie as well. Right?
Yes,
which is unlike
absolutely.
this one. Like they didn't focus on that in this,
A little bit with the Steve Wozniak thing of like
for credit,
yeah,
but not to the degree.
not
of,
business.
like,
it's not money. They're not talking
no,
about money
which,
in this one.
which I think that's more that movie than the creation
Well, that
of
movie,
it.
well,
I think it has more to do with that than the creation of it.
that also, you're talking about Facebook. They talk about the creation of Facebook.
No, but I just feel the focus of that film is more on like who should get like ownership, and like more so than the actual I think they focus more on that than they do on the creation part of it.
Okay, I see.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
yeah, that movie. That's also one of my favorite movies of all time.
You know how like in this movie they focus on the daughter thing.
Yeah,
that one subplot is the shit that happens as a
Well,
result. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the beginning of the movie, he has that conversation in the Social Network. He has that conversation with his girlfriend,
right?
And he's a total jerk to her, and she breaks up with him. And then the very end of the movie,
which leads to the creation of Facebook.
No, yeah, at least the creation of it. But the very end of the movie, he sends her a friend request. It goes back to that original relationship, and that's kind of like he realized he was kind of a jerk, and like he has faults. So, and this is sort of the movie I think similar that has a similarity between Steve Jobs is like a very intelligent guy who uses his intelligence to flaunt at people all the time, and like I'm better than you kind of thing. But then it comes down to, I realize I made mistakes. I could have been a better human being. And it's just interesting the comparison because in Mark Zuckerberg's case, he was a young kid, like in the the Social Network. He's a teenager, and then by the time the movie ends, he's probably like 22, 23 years old. He's still a young guy.
Yeah.
But he comes to that realization. Steve is like in the first act, he's like in his 30s or something or whatever. And then it takes him to like old age to finally understand that, realize that, and I just
he wasn't confronting his problems.
He wasn't. So I wrote number 1, The Social Network, and then in parentheses or anything else Aaron Sorkin has written because let's tie that whole thing.
Sure.
So number 2, 2001: A Space Odyssey. This movie is littered with references to 2001. I don't know if you guys caught that, but the first original, the opening segment of the movie with the black and white interview with Arthur C. Clarke, where he talks about all this. That's the writer of
I know.
2001. He co-wrote the screenplay with Stanley Kubrick. There's also references to like, because I don't think we talked about this. They were really pressuring the computer to say hello.
Yes.
And because the reason why he wanted to do that was because he wanted to create the sort of the welcomeness of a computer, like an easy environment.
And they referenced the robot from 2001.
Yes, Space Odyssey. He said Hollywood has made computers scary things, and we need it to be inviting, and that's sort of what goes into the design of these things. It's like he says, like the floppy, the CD disc looks like a smile or whatever of the computer. Like everything is made to be warming and inviting. And Joanna Kate Winslet was like, oh well, the computer said hello in that movie and it still scared the shit out of me or whatever. Like the computer could talk in HAL 9000. And then another sort of also the black cube, I feel like could be a reference to the monolith in 2001. Like and then also the ending, the backstage room, to me, he has this the vibe of the room tonally feels very much like the final scene in 2001 in the bedroom where he's aging rapidly, and and Steve Jobs is also like at that point an old man as well. And so I kind of just saw there's a lot. 2001 is one of Danny Boyle's favorite movies. So
many of those directors from that era.
So I see a lot of visual cues from 2001 in that. Okay, number 3, The Imitation Game, which is the story of Alan Turing.
I know, I haven't seen that one.
It's great. It's excellent. And I was actually thinking about it. That movie was sort of like
Benedict Cumberbatch,
where that movie was sort of
Doctor Strange.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I know that's
Sherlock. That was sort of the precursor, I feel like, to Oppenheimer, where it's like a team of I don't know if you know who that is. That's the guy who invented the computer, basically, Alan Turing. And they have to create this sort of machine. They have to race against time to win over the Nazis, and it's like these group of
I know what it's about. I've never watched it.
It's a good film. I recommend it. And so there's the scene when they Steve Jobs and that journalist, they see a picture of Alan Turing, and the guy says, well, who's that? And then that's Alan Turing, and most people don't know. And then so I think that would be kind of an interesting pairing of you watch Steve Jobs, towards the end they say who's Alan Turing, and then you watch The Imitation Game. Like you educate yourself about the story of Alan Turing. Okay, I have two. So I have so number 4, Vice, which is the document not documentary. It's the movie about Dick Cheney, where Christian Bale plays Dick Cheney. That's another movie that I feel like people kind of swept under the rug. It's another unconventional biopic or biodrama about the former U.S. President Dick Cheney. I'm not trying to make any parallels towards Steve Jobs and Dick Cheney, because Steve Jobs, the worst thing he was just a jerk.
Yeah.
Dick Cheney might be like one of the most evil people who have ever lived. Have you seen that one?
No.
Oh my god, it's so good. And that's a Christian Bale is but that's another one, like people never talk about that movie, and I feel like it's a very well made movie, and I could go on about it, but I'll spare you on that one. Okay, so 5 is Ferrari. That's another biopic that takes place in 1 year of his life.
Yeah.
It takes place in 1957.
That's right.
That's another thing. It's like you're not showing this guy's whole life. You're just showing one moment to describe who his.
I like Ferrari a lot.
I like Ferrari a lot as well,
Yeah.
and not that it was the same relationship, but the Adam Driver and Penelope Cruz kind of reminded me of Fassbender and Kate Winslet. They're sort of back and forth, how she's keeping him in check, kind of thing. Like that just so. Okay, you know what? I'll just end it on this one. Number 6.
No, give us all your picks.
Okay. The last 2 are kind of stupid, but number 6, and this is like the one that I wanted to get out. The Last Dance, the Michael Jordan documentary series.
Yeah.
Because I feel like both what that did and what a good biopic or whatever account of someone's life should do is.
I love that documentary.
I love it too.
It's good.
It's really good about Michael Jordan. It's like a series. It's like a 10-part series of Michael Jordan and the Chicago.
How to achieve greatness.
How to achieve greatness. But what I really like about this and about The Last Dance is, and why I find them similar.
He wasn't well liked either.
He wasn't liked. I look at Steve Jobs and Michael Jordan very similarly in the sense that what a good account of these people's lives should be is that you should celebrate why they're great, but then also show like their human side and kind of bring them down a notch and demystify their iconicness, like demystify the myth.
Not only that, they are willing to sacrifice the other bullshit in their life to get what they needed, and to accomplish what their goals were.
So Michael Jordan,
and he did not care about it, like what his teammates thought of him,
at
what
all.
anybody thought about him.
He wanted the end goal to win championships, and it ended in him coming across like a jerk to a lot of his teammates, and even he got choked about it.
There's a quote from him in that movie where he literally says that.
If you don't want to win, you know.
No, he basically says, like, he's like, yeah, there's a lot of people that didn't like me back then or whatever. Things like he's like, I needed to do what I had to do, kind of thing. Like basically that sentiment. I don't know the quote.
Well, there's this one part of that series where he starts crying.
I remember.
Because he understands that the perception of him is that he was not a nice guy, and that hurts him. Like, and so that's what I'm saying. Like, that's sort of like they're showing both the genius and the visionariness of both Steve Jobs and Michael Jordan.
You have to sacrifice that stuff in order to.
It shows the cost of that, and like how
that's
they're
a hard decision to do, though.
How they're both like very important, like contributors to society, very important figures of like the late 20th century and stuff, but. There was also like they brought them down a notch, like both
people like Jordan because he was an amazing basketball player, not a good human being.
That's exactly the same thing with Steve Jobs.
Exactly.
That's the thing, and that's why I see the parallel connection between the two. I'm not gonna say the other two because
why? Hit us with it.
Okay, because they're kind of stupid.
No need for explanation.
Number 7, Uncut Gems. Just because how much of an anxiety attack that movie is, and I feel like this movie is like
that one I don't see. I don't think it's anxiety.
Maybe no. Well, when they're like racing, like make the computer say hello, and they're all yelling at each other. And, like, there's a lot of shouting at each other at this movie. Like that's sort of
you need 5 minutes, 3 minutes on stage. Yeah, okay, sure, I can see it. And what was the last?
And then the last one is the Kanye West documentary. The Genius.
I have never seen that yet.
Yeah, that's another one where it's like they're kind of similar.
Misunderstood geniuses.
Exactly.
Yeah, there you go.
And was he a genius or was he not? That's another one where people say, "Was Kanye actually a genius, or is he just or does he just believe he is?" Right? Like, exactly.
Yeah.
It's a God complex.
All right. So movies we've watched, Max, since it was your pick, do you want to start us off, or movies we want to watch, movies you've watched lately?
Okay, movies I want to watch. There's only one left in the year that I want to watch. It's Nosferatu. Comes Christmas Day. Hopefully I get the chance to see it. It won't probably make my list because we'll probably make that before that comes out. So unfortunately, but you know, Robert Edgers, he's on a streak, so I definitely
you can revise it within the new year.
Yeah, for sure. And you know,
and
lists are always just of the moment thing, anyways. Like years down the line, they always change. So I want to look forward to that. Movies I've seen, I saw The Apprentice, the Trump movie.
Oh yeah, how was that?
It's good. I liked it a lot. And
Jeremy Strong
and Sebastian Stan. I think Sebastian Stan was phenomenal.
He's good.
He's so good
He's
in that
good.
movie. Like, I'll be honest, I didn't really take him seriously as an actor.
This is the Trump movie.
The
one
Trump
where he
movie
plays
where he plays Trump,
Yeah.
and Jeremy Strong, the guy from Succession, he
Yes.
plays his mentor.
Winter Soldier is the guy who plays Trump. The guy who plays
Okay.
Winter
Yeah.
Soldier. Yeah,
He's
yeah.
fantastic in this movie. Actually, to me, he's the front runner for best actor. Like, I think he should win the Oscar. Like,
You think he'll be nominated for this?
I hope he gets nominated, and I haven't seen
Hey,
anything
listen,
yet that's challenging.
I'll
it.
say
Like,
this: I don't know his politics, but that's a ballsy move that he actually played him in this movie.
Yeah,
though, I
yeah,
must say,
for
because
sure.
like I feel like a lot of people will not watch this movie just based off the fact they may not like Trump, which I think is a mistake.
well, the
because, like,
movie
you know,
is
like-
not
Never
the
watched
movie
it
is
yet.
not a very flattering picture of Trump. I'll just say that.
Okay.
It's
What
not-
picture is?
And
No, but I just think like if you dislike somebody so much, you can't explore like possibly like a film
no,
about
but then
that person. Like,
but then
you know what I
people
mean?
play like people play these evil people.
That's-
Like Christian Bale
This is
played
what I'm
Dick
saying.
Cheney. Like,
This is what I'm saying,
know?
though. But I feel like I could see somebody saying that. Oh, I don't want to see
Yeah.
that because that's not a fan of.
and
this,
Jeremy
right?
Strong is fantastic too. He is awesome.
I
in
do
this
want to
movie.
watch it.
You should check it. I actually saw it twice because I saw it on my own, and then I showed my folks it, and
Oh,
they
nice.
liked it too.
It's on streaming services, right?
Yeah. You should check it out.
Yeah.
I saw Anora. I saw that
So
twice.
did
as well.
I. So did
I
I.
really like it, man.
I fucking love this
love it
movie,
too.
man.
I love it, man.
Oh my god! So
Maybe the funniest movie
and-
of the year.
and
I'll say that.
So funny, so funny.
Heartbreaking too.
Douche. Yeah, douche is my favorite part of the whole movie. Where he's like douche. He's like, don't you mean touche?
Yeah, touche.
I haven't watched it yet either.
Bro, it's so good, and there's
I can't
tits in
find
it.
it.
You'll love it. It's
Yeah.
like it's
No,
about
I
a
can't-
stripper.
I haven't found it yet.
Oh
It's
man,
awesome.
so
I might have to type it up.
you might have to go to the theater with somebody and check
Watch
it
it
out.
in theaters, bro. It's so worth it. And
So good. Honestly, yeah. But yeah, you say your thoughts on it.
so I saw it with
that's one
my
of my
friend, and then I
pictures,
saw it with my folks, and then I really wanted. This is probably gonna come across a little weird, but I really wanted my mom to see it because she speaks Russian like
Oh,
fluently.
okay, yeah.
So like 50% of the movie is in Russian.
That's right, yeah.
And so like she got a kick out of that. It was really, really funny.
Does
And
it have subtitles?
yeah, subtitles. And hilarious as hell.
Mikey Madison killed it. She's
Killed it.
so
That's
good
another
at-
person that I swear if she doesn't get nominated or win an Oscar,
She will
I'm gonna
be. She'll
I'm
be
gonna
nominated.
riot because
Yeah,
she
she'll be
deserves it.
nominated. She honestly, like, you know, I happen to sometimes in the past being around strippers. I think she
Yo, absolutely.
she actually did a very good job of acting
Absolutely.
like a stripper in this movie. I'm not gonna
Absolutely.
lie.
I'm pretty sure it doesn't
just a
take
young
much hard
girl.
work, bro, to fucking act like a
No,
stripper.
it really no. There's certain
She's
things-
convincing.
Yeah, she's very
not,
convincing.
not even as a stripper,
Not
but
just
just
like
as
an
a young.
actress playing a stripper. Like it's just no, it's a good job. You know what I mean by that?
No, I
though,
know
right?
exactly.
Yeah,
what,
yeah.
Not even as a stripper,
I'm
but
down for amateur night. Don't worry. I don't really give a fuck.
No, it was great. She
No.
did a really good job, and it's so funny yet tragic at the same
Absolutely.
friggin' time.
very consistent with his other movies.
I
Tom
haven't.
Baker.
So the only other one I've watched is Red Rocket.
Yeah.
I haven't watched many of his other. I feel that his other movies have been praised more than that movie.
Yeah.
But I really need to catch up and check those out
Check it out.
because
Tangerine and
I
Florida
love this. I love this movie honestly, and you know I'll even throw in Christine's commentary on the movie after we finished the movie. The movie ended. She's like, "Wow, I could have spent another 2 hours watching." This movie."
Absolutely.
That's what she said.
Absolutely.
Which is a big praise. For
It
her.
is
She was
when
like,
when you're sad that the movie ended because you wanted so much more of
it's
it.
an over 2 hour film. It's 2 hours and 20 minutes, 2 hours and 18 minutes. And
Yeah.
she literally said, I could have spent 2 more hours watching this film. That's how much I enjoyed watching this movie.
I loved it.
It
so
was
much.
it was such a great time.
in
And
my opinion, the funniest movie of the year.
that is one that is definitely in contention for my top 5 now.
Yeah.
This last quarter of the year between music
It's making
and
mine
movies
for sure.
has been great for me. Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
making mine for
Yeah,
sure.
no, you're right. You could call on calling this one because I know you've been enjoying the
Oh
Sean
man,
Baker.
oh man,
It was excellent.
actually.
I even went in and say like it can't be that good, right? Like I know it won the Palme d'Or or whatever
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
called, and I know that people are saying it's going to be like a front runner for winning an Oscar this year. I'm like, no, it can't be that good. I was like, nope, it
It
is
has
that
to.
good. I'm
has
like,
to.
because of all the genre, the plot of the movie. I'm like, no way is this movie going to be that good based off of this story.
Yeah,
It's so
it's
good.
really good. I enjoyed
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
And actually, because both movies that I wanted to see at TIFF this year was Megalopolis and Anora, and I'm just happy that for me, my taste, that I ended up enjoying both of them. Like I didn't get to see them at TIFF. I'm just glad that like, oh, you know, when you saw it and you anticipate a movie so much and then it doesn't
Yeah.
meet your expectations.
Yeah.
And to me, they both delivered for me.
Good.
So I'm happy on that front.
Is
Yeah.
that it?
No, Anora,
Oh, an AN. Okay.
ANORA. So check it out, please. so then I mentioned this to you in the chat or whatever. Like I watched Spectre again
Yeah.
because I found out that Radiohead did the original theme, and I'm like obsessed with that Radiohead song. I watch it like almost daily now. But I wanted to revisit it on that just because I just couldn't remember watching it, and it's a good movie. I don't it's definitely not like the strongest of the Craig Bond films.
Yeah, I gave
And
you my ranking. It's my least favorite.
It's your least favorite.
Not to say it doesn't have some good stuff in it.
It has
still.
some solid stuff in it,
Like
and
in comparison to everything else, I think it's my least.
it did miss the mark
Yeah.
a bit for me too. But it's good. It has some good qualities, and it was
convoluted story. I think it's
yeah, it's a little all over the place.
underused villain.
Yeah, I 100% agree with those comments. And then last but not least, last night I watched Gladiator 2. Yeah.
And
do you want me to like tell you about it? Or?
Well, you could just say whether you liked it or not, or
I'm like indifferent to it. I don't think I like it or hate it. I don't think I love it or hate it.
How about Denzel in it?
He's okay. Like he's good in the movie. Denzel's always good. And Denzel plays a character that
you clearly didn't like Pedro Pascal though, because you made comments about him today.
No, it's not even that. I mean, Pedro Pascal
to Mario.
Listen, for me personally, Pedro Pascal, just for me, like for my taste, he doesn't have any screen presence. Like I don't even notice that he's on there. It's like he could be out of the thing, and I wouldn't even care.
You know what's funny? I do agree with you. Saying that he's overrated.
He's super overrated,
and I don't mean that in a bad way. I like Pedro Pascal, but overrated in terms of his popularity as of late.
It's bigger than I think
because people like him. They like his.
Yeah, they think he's a good guy. Like he's a nice personality.
But this is what I'm saying. It doesn't always have to translate to like this guy's the best actor for him to be popular in the moment.
So it's definitely not nowhere near as good as the first Gladiator.
You're not even that big on Gladiator. You said last time.
Well, the thing is, it's not that I'm not big on it. I just don't love it. Like I don't like. I'm not Ralph Cifaretto, bro. Like
right.
I'm not, and I think that's the biggest tragedy of Gladiator 2 is that Ralph didn't live long enough to see it, bro.
I love Gladiator.
Yeah.
I love Gladiator.
No, fair enough. I like it too. No, Gladiator has a lot. You know what it is? It's not that I don't like Gladiator. I love it, but there are other movies of that time period. From that era. That I like more. Like I like Kingdom of Heaven more.
Where does it rank for Russell Crowe for you though? Is that his best performance? It's up there.
Maybe his most iconic, but I really love him in The Insider.
The Insider's great.
That's probably my favorite performance. He was amazing in that movie. Like he was genius in that movie.
He was.
But I don't even think this movie, Gladiator 2, is even. I don't even think it's better than Napoleon, bro. I think Napoleon.
No, get the fuck out.
Seriously,
of here.
seriously,
right,
because
that's enough now.
No, but
I'd rather watch some Count of Monte Cristo.
Napoleon was problematic. Man.
Napoleon, as disappointed as I was in that movie, I still haven't seen the director's cut.
You know, that's someone that I think's overrated.
Joaquin Phoenix.
Yes,
I think he's really good. I think he's. I think he's really good, and you know what the funny thing is?
I just think he picks bad roles.
And
okay. I think he's good.
What about him in Gladiator? As Commodus.
Love him in Gladiator.
Yeah, he was
such a piece of shit.
He was amazing.
I loved him in Gladiator.
He was so good. I think he's just as good as Russell.
Wow, that really upset you, eh?
But
he's a good actor. I just never like the movies he plays.
I like Joaquin a lot. But that to me that's like a real actor. And so the problem with the Gladiator Part 2 is that you could tell it's like such an unnecessary sequel. Like it doesn't need to have been made. And Paul Mescal, the guy who plays the lead actor, you watch it and you go, okay, they really just like it makes me wish, like it makes me like think like, okay, Napoleon had a great lead actor, Joaquin, and it's like not that Paul Mescal is not a good actor or anything, but it's just like it felt. My friend described it perfectly. He said the movie was soulless, Gladiator 2. I feel like it's just and it's a very good word. The word I would use was pedestrian. I feel like Ridley Scott. Ridley Scott to me is just making these movies just to make them. I don't even.
That was going to be my last question to you. Is he done? Like, because many people
are. No. I'll never say he's done because this guy's a workhorse. Like he's in his mid 80s and he's directing
these
his
best
movies.
Work behind him though. Is that a fair thing to say?
I think he just doesn't care now. I don't think he cares to make like.
Did you see? I love him though. His press talks. People are like, "How is this possible that there's there was a thing like aqueducts in Rome, but that they put there's a crocodile or something in a shark,
which I don't know how you did that.
Well, people are like, how is that possible? They could bring a shark back in those times. They're like, he's like, what do you care? It's a movie. It's like it's fake. Like
Yeah.
who cares?
Yeah.
I love his answers.
I
He
love
does,
it.
like,
That's
no,
good.
No, the best one
I
was
love it.
the
But when guys get old, they're just like, who fucking cares? Get
The
out of
filter's
here.
gone.
Yeah.
no, the best one was last year when they with these all these. First of all, I don't care if a movie is historically accurate. I think that's
Right?
stupid.
Oh, I know this
But
story. Yeah,
when he says, "Oh, Napoleon was historically accurate," and then he says, "Well, were you there?"
Yeah,
Well,
how
then
do you
shut the
know?
fuck
Yeah.
up.
How do you know it was historically accurate?
Shut the fuck
None
up.
of us were there, you idiot. Yeah, exactly.
Bro, that's the kind of stuff I
love
love.
it. I love it.
I
I
love
love
Ridley
it.
Scott. I would probably put him in my top 5 directors of all time.
But his best work, people are saying, are behind him possibly right now. I know you don't want to say that
I
after
don't- I don't wanna-
our talk about the Big Lava.
I don't. You know what the thing is? I don't want to say that because I don't think it's not possible for him to make a good movie. I just think he just goes on set, quickly does the movie, and then he's on to the next project. He makes a movie once a year, bro.
Almost every film that he's been involved with recently that we've talked about, you have not cared for. I'm just
Napoleon-
gonna point that out.
No,
I'm
but
just saying.
look, Napoleon came out last year, and that's a big historical epic.
You didn't like it all that much.
No, I didn't like it. I didn't like it that much. But then Gladiator 2 comes out, and it's supposed to be a big historical epic. He makes 2 epics back to back. Like, you think, like,
Right.
maybe spend a little bit
Right.
more time. You know what? If a hip hop analogy would be like Lil Wayne.
Right.
With Lil Wayne, where like he was coming out with like
Bro, he
tape-
had a run for like 5 or 6
I know,
years.
and then after
Yeah.
that run ended,
Yeah.
he was coming out with a tape that every year that nobody liked, and people were like,
Yeah.
"Okay, take some time now with your
Yeah,
projects."
you're
Like,
fair, you're fair.
you know what I
That's
mean?
fair,
Like,
that's fair.
and that's
fair.
what I would say about Ridley Scott. It's like, bro, marinate on your movies a little bit longer because
Well, I'm looking forward to it because I want to see.
I
Denzel.
hope for your sake that you like it.
Yeah.
There are just, to me, there are moments that are like they're supposed to be epic that don't translate to.
Also,
epicness.
there's other people sharing the same sentiment that you are about.
Yeah,
this.
that's fine.
They have mixed
That's fine.
feelings on
And
it.
here's another thing. The historical epic, I'll say this is where I'll end on. The historical epic like genre that Ridley has like really participated in. He's made so many good ones. Now it's coming to the point where I don't even feel like he's even challenging himself as a filmmaker. He's not really taking any risk or whatever.
He's just playing the hits.
He's just playing because there are like scenes in this movie and in Napoleon where they're like these big, large battle sequences and people are dying, blah, 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 blah. And after a point, it just becomes noise because it's like, okay, I know you can do this already. Like, what am I watching this bullshit? Like, it's not bullshit, but why am I watching this over and over again? Like in Napoleon, I like the scenes actually more in Napoleon when they're firing cannonballs and like horses' legs were
Did you
getting.
watch the extended cut of that?
I want to.
Yeah,
I'm going to
I
one day.
I haven't yet.
I'm going to one day, but I recommend Kingdom of Heaven director's cut for sure. And
okay.
Listen, Denzel was good. But I'll just leave it on like
Okay.
it was. Maybe I'll like it. The thing is, it's like it was. I don't want to say too much about it because you haven't seen it, so I'll just say it was okay.
Okay.
And I think Napoleon might be better.
Okay. Well,
I'm very curious to know what you think. Tell me what you
movies
think.
I'm looking forward to watching. Gladiator 2. Despite all that.
You know how he says?
No. I
Take
Nico,
a clip of that one where he says, "I don't want to watch it. I don't know how I'm still watching this stuff," and then we put it at the year-end video for us here.
Yeah.
Just that little snippet, bro.
I like
running
that.
back as
Yeah.
I don't know, but still watching this shit after 5 years.
Yeah. It's just I don't think Ridley is like he just
There's
goes
marketing
from full,
in
he
there.
already has 3. He has 3 movies lined up. I'm like, bro, what?
Yeah, he's
Like,
gonna
some
die. He's
filmmakers-
gonna die a filmmaker.
No, and that he wants to like pass. He wants to pass on the director.
Did you hear about his comment about Quentin Tarantino? He's like, he's full of shit. This guy, because everyone asks, "What do you
gonna
think about
retire at
Quentin Tarantino saying he's gonna retire?" Oh, he's full of shit.
Yeah.
Yes.
You gotta love Ridley. You know what? You gotta love Ridley for not holding his tongue.
I
at
love
all.
him. I love him.
What he said when the last duel didn't make any money, he was saying,
Oh.
people are on your phones
That was
all
a
day."
huge bomb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it's because people are on their phones all the time or something.
Okay, so yeah, I'm looking forward to Gladiator 2 and Nosferatu. You pretty much,
Yeah.
that's pretty much it for me. I watched the Nora, as I just mentioned. I talked to my thoughts with Max here. I really love that. I watched Saturday Night. I didn't like that all too much. I give it a 3 out of 5 stars. I think it's okay. It's kind of fun just to see the experiment of them trying to act like the SNL characters, but I feel like, I spend too much time trying to figure out who's who and what's going on because it's such a fast-paced movie, as is SNL behind the scenes, apparently, because they're trying to put everything together. I do like that they try to do it in real time. Like at the start of the film, they're like, you got an hour and a half or whatever until the show goes on the air, and the movie runs exactly that much time. So everything you're seeing on screen, they're trying to depict it as in a real-time movement of them trying to put the show together behind the scenes. There's some good characterizations, there's some good imitations of people acting as certain characters. And so it was okay.
From the trailer, that Chevy Chase one looks really like spot on to me.
It's good. Yeah, he's good. The attitude of Chevy Chase. Yeah. And then this afternoon, just before we recorded tonight, I watched A Real Pain, which is the new Jesse Eisenberg movie. I know you wanted to watch it as well, Jay. Him and Kieran Culkin in A Real Pain, which is about that's the one that you set the trailer around for. Jesse Eisenberg, the two go on a trip together, and he's annoying him the whole time. They're basically, their grandmother passed away, and they go to Poland, where the Holocaust had occurred. They're Jewish, and they went there to explore basically where their grandmother had come from, and like do the tour of like, you know, the camps and all this kind of stuff, and try to like get more in touch with her roots and learn about the things that she had endured in her life, that she like had went through in her passing. So she had left the money to go do this in her will. So they get together, and Kieran Culkin is not in a good place. Jesse Eisenberg does not want to be there with them, and it kind of just goes from there.
Yeah, I want to see it.
Kieran Culkin is excellent in this movie. Jesse Eisenberg also wrote and directed this movie. This is apparently his second film. I thought he did a really good job. Really well cast. They both play really good parts in it. But Kieran Culkin, a lot of people are referring it to, like, they're saying that he's basically more so like his character from Succession. So it's not that much of a stretch, apparently, but like there's some great emotional moments in the film. And honestly, I related to a lot of what was discussed in the movie about just people being in different places of their life, coming together and trying to work through their issues with one another. It actually spoke to me a lot on a lot of different levels. I thought it was a really good movie. You laugh, you cry watching it. It's honestly a really good time. And you know what? An hour and a half. Nice. Which is really nice, honestly, these days, because we're in an era of there's 2.5 films all the time. I went and watched it an hour and a half. I came out of the theater, it was the mid-afternoon. It was perfect. It wasn't like I spent 5 hours at the theater, right? So it was good. How about you, Jay?
What have I watched lately? I was just looking.
It's interesting that we both talked about movies that had like Succession castmates in them.
Yeah,
they've
been doing good for themselves.
But Jerry Strong, he does is like a new character in that Apprentice.
That's what I've heard. I heard he always does a different character.
It's really good. It's a really good. I hope he gets nominated for an Oscar. Honestly,
I watched Slingshot with Fish. Yeah, I did.
Slingshot?
Yeah, you watch it.
The old movie. Which Slingshot?
The one, this one here with Lawrence Fishburne.
Oh, I don't know what that is then.
Yeah, it's they're astronauts.
Oh, okay.
They're aboard a mission to go to Saturn's moon, right? Yeah, so it's interesting.
Yeah,
a little bit of a watch.
What's the one that I'm thinking of? The Billy Bob Thornton movie.
Sling Blade.
I thought that's what he said he watched. I was like, why are you watching?
I've been watching Billy Bob lately.
I know. In Landman, right?
Yeah. That fucking show is crazy. But I also watched The Wild Robot, as I told you.
Oh yeah,
that's good,
man.
I
watched that one. Yeah, I actually watched that in theaters, which was crazy.
Yeah.
Oh.
It's not a bad movie at all.
It's great. I
don't think
it's very cute, very nice, movie. Again,
you got to be a certain age, maybe 5 or 6,
to understand it a little bit better. Yeah. So but you didn't comprehend what was going on in that film.
Go blow me. And there was one more that I watched, or that I was wanting to watch. Where the fuck is it? It's on my list here. I got a bunch of stuff here that I have that I haven't. I watched it. Actually, I finished watching the Twister after 3 times trying to watch it.
The new one?
Yeah.
I didn't like it.
And I wasn't a Helen Hunt. It was different.
Your boy, yeah.
It had some good music on
the
it.
The original Twister's better.
He should have been a Gladiator too.
It had some good music on
it.
In
every movie, actually.
Right? Since I've been since I've been liking the country stuff a lot this lately.
Original Twister's better though, right?
Different style. Different style. This I can understand this one. I can understand where this one was going with it.
Yeah.
Because it's different technology.
It's
they're
okay.
using nowadays.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
So they had to change it. But you know what? I went back to watch. It Follows, bro. I forgot.
I love It Follows.
They're making a sequel.
And it's just fucking freaky. That's why I think that's why I went back. I think that's what I heard, and that's why I went back to watch it, because I wanted to see what that was. I wanted to remember what it was about, which was fucking really good. So, but there was what was that? One more. I still haven't had a chance to watch Conclave. And I haven't had a chance to watch. I wanted to watch The Count of Monte Cristo
with Jim Caviezel.
Is that his name here?
The one from the 90s or whatever.
No, this one here, the new one.
Okay, no. This is a new one. Then.
This one came out. This is what's his face, Pierre Niley.
Okay.
Neely. or whatever. There's a lot of French stuff in this one. So obviously,
It's a French story, right?
yeah, it's a French story, right?
By
But
Alexandre Dumas.
you gotta really want to watch that kind of stuff when you're watching it. And I watched this one too, Godrich, which was
Oh, I saw
that was
that.
like a weird. I don't know. Did they film it before Beetlejuice or after Beetlejuice?
Yeah,
or
yeah.
what
It's
the
Michael
fuck?
Keaton, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, because that's two totally
I didn't watch
different-
it. I didn't watch it.
Two
but-
totally different Michael Keatons
Yeah.
going
Well,
on, right?
he likes to do different stuff.
But he
too.
was also, he was he's a father who's been thrown in all of a sudden a situation because his wife just gives him a letter and she goes and sends herself to rehab.
Dear John letter. Or...
No.
Oh,
She just
okay.
goes in and puts herself in rehab, and he didn't understand why, and he couldn't figure out why the fuck she was doing it because he wasn't paying attention.
Yeah.
Obviously, and usually
John.
that's what usually happens in a longer marriage like that.
Yeah.
But he's also he had to call on his daughter from a previous marriage to help out,
Okay.
and it kind of builds their relationship together too, right? So it was a very another little
Good?
touching
Like
movie.
that?
It was decent, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it'll be in my top.
No,
picks,
yeah.
it's fun. It's fun to getting to watch these new movies, and now I just found the one that you guys were saying. I don't know, maybe I'll check that.
Yeah,
out.
watch
Great.
that.
Check
Watch
that
It's about
out.
strippers. Why not? Right?
It is. Yeah.
Couldn't
It's great
recommend
stuff.
it.
I mean,
Great
like,
stuff.
like we do it, bro. It's all for the ladies, bro.
Yeah,
Gotta
there you
watch
go.
the strippers.
There you
bro.
have it. Is that it then? That's all you've been watching and wanted to anything
Oh,
you
I've
want
been
to
watching
watch?
TV shows, but we will again. Don't talk about TV shows.
Well,
on
stay
this show.
tuned for a show hopefully
Because-
about
Yeah, we'll have hopefully, man. I just got to learn how to talk in a different scenario and a different layout. It's a little harder to figure out. I watch too much to fucking even sit down and record it.
that. There you go. Well, there you have it, everybody. Those are things we've been watching and look forward to watching lately. And finally, here we go. Here's my pick for the next film for our
dun. Drum
Christmas
rolls,
movie. You guys
please.
ready for this?
Where's the drum roll?
I'm gonna give you 20 films that you could choose from, guys. Like
Such
that.
an asshole. Oh my God.
Hey, where the streamer doesn't have a fucking drum roll on it now?
Never fails to take a shot, bro. Kendrick
No, it's
over
not a
here.
love. It's not a love.
No,
Yeah.
I'm just bugging around.
All right, you guys ready for this? I don't know if you guys are gonna love me or hate me for this one. Here we go. You got to make sure you come in for that because that's our only episode in December, the Christmas episode. Guys, ready for this?
Mhm.
All right. Jingle All the Way, starring Arnold
You
Schwarzenegger.
fucking guy. I had
I
a
have
feeling.
seen this movie actually.
Wasn't it a wonderful life like you were just talking about? I was like,
I
it's
already
gotta
know.
be-
I already know what my favorite quote of that
I had a
is.
few. Not a pervert. Yeah.
He says that in every film.
No, it doesn't.
Is that-
Kindergarten
is that
Cop.
Jingle- Is that Jingle All the Way?
Fuck.
It's Jingle All the Way.
Oh,
Yeah.
mine's put the cookie
Yeah,
down.
no,
No!
yeah. All right, don't burn them all now.
Sorry. You could edit that shit
Yeah,
out.
no. That's one of my favorites too.
That's my
There's
favorite
many,
line of that
There's
movie.
many lines in this one, trust me. All right, guys. So stay tuned in December for our Christmas-related pick, Jingle All the Way, starring Arnold Schwarzenegger. This guy, he's like, really? You're gonna make me watch this movie? Yeah,
I actually
Yeah.
saw this movie not too long
yeah.
ago.
I love it. I love it. I
I'd
love it.
rather
Maybe
watch
like-
a
maybe like
fucking
2
Hallmark
years ago I
special,
saw it.
bro.
No, this is
2 or
way
3 years
better,
ago I
bro.
watched
This
it.
is genuinely one of my favorite Christmas movies. I love this movie. I love this movie. I'm telling you right now, this isn't a joke.
No, I know. I believe you, bro. Anything with Arnold Schwarzenegger, you're loving, bro. I know you are.
Ooh, that's gonna be fun.
That's gonna be fun. So hopefully Julie will recover from her bear attack from the Revenant next episode.
She's busy winning an Oscar.
Yeah,
That bear was all up in her.
and she
Oh my
she will be back hopefully for that Christmas episode. And stay tuned for our year end, our favorite movies of the year, everyone. All right, guys. All right, thanks. Longest episode ever.
Yo, is it actually?
Oh,
Does
absolutely.
it have the record? Yeah.
For sure. Good stuff.
I'm
Good
glad
talk.
that was
Good
my
pick.
pick.
Good
Hey,
pick.
you know what?
Good
That
pick.
makes for good thinking of. That can if we can do this long. Hey, we could do 24 hours.
You definitely can.
My
All right.
ass probably wouldn't like it, but yeah.
All right, guys. We'll see you guys next time. Thank you.
Peace.
Thanks for tuning in. And thank you to Max on that great pick.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Glad you guys liked it.
Never said I didn't.
Well, I don't know. I mean, you were talking mad ish about Steve Jobs last time, so I was like, oh.
Because I hate apples.
Where you feel as every fairy tale comes real. I've looked at love that way.
I used to think she said clowns.
But now it's just another show. You leave 'em laughing when you go.
That's right.